Finebaum show. It's not Jerry Springer, right?
Oh, sometimes it does turn into a little Jerry Springer. Hi, hello, I am Peter Burns, filling in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, who gets a well-deserved day or two off after being the hardest working man in all of show business all throughout this football season. We got a lot of things to get into, including, of course, your phone calls, 855-242-PAUL. Always great when I host is an opportunity to get some new blood in on the calls and develop some new legends. We'll get into that, but let's go ahead and get into our headlines right off the bat because it's crazy in basketball because now we're starting to get into college hoop season, and sure enough, Jermaine Couisnard, South Carolina, redshirt freshman, he did this in Columbia to shock the Wildcats.
4.1 seconds left, we're tied up. Couisnard, pull up three, good if it goes, he got it! He baked it in! Unreal shot by Jermaine Couisnard! And the Gamecocks have taken down Kentucky.
Love it. Part of the chaos, and this was one of the things that we're talking about SEC basketball as we start moving on towards football season, and you need upsets like this. You need upsets to kind of keep the blood boiling and get it going, and Couisnard was fantastic. He ends up having 26 points on the night. Sold out arena. Only the 16th time ever in Colonial Life Arena they had a sellout, and he gave one for the ages. And it's not only that game that was wild on a Wednesday night. We had more upsets that kept rolling, including the one where I know Finebaum fans knew about it. Alabama hands Auburn its first loss of the season. By the way, it wasn't just a whipping. It was a good old-fashioned whooping. There's a difference. When it's an O, couple of O's instead of an I, a whooping instead of a whipping, that's a different level. And it just always made for a strange season in what we've seen so far. Take a look at this. AP top 10 teams so far this season. 22 losses to unranked teams. Most in AP poll history. I mean, the poll's been going on for almost 60 some odd years, and this is the most that we have had. Now, we're going to be joined by Nate Oates a little bit later in the program, and Jermaine Couisnard, who had the game winner for South Carolina as well. But this is starting to kind of round into what I think is going to be the best college basketball seasons we've had in a long time. Not just here in the SEC, which I think is wide open, with Auburn getting its first loss and Alabama starting to play a little bit better, but just college basketball in general. I think there's been 5 different teams that have been number one, have been knocked off their perch. So it's kind of like that, what if your team gets hot, like South Carolina did a couple of years ago and made it to the Final Four, or like Tennessee has had in a couple last years as well, even the Auburn Tigers. So anything is possible, and I'm looking forward to that because guess what? You could be a team that comes out of nowhere and wins the national championship, and that is like the LSU Tigers. And, of course, what a crazy couple of weeks it has been. And now for LSU, we've got some news and some hype. Let's get into the news. Adam Rittenberg, ESPN, he says his sources, LSU defensive coordinator Dave Aranda, leading candidate to become Baylor's next head coach. Deal could be done soon. Of course, Aranda was the D coordinator that really kind of stepped it up with his team. One of the reasons why he kept Clemson in the ball game, or against the Tigers in that ball game against Clemson early. They ultimately go on, of course, and win the national title. But that's not the only headline coming up from LSU is, will Aranda be at the White House? LSU football team, I just talked to some of their staffers a couple of minutes ago, and I said, what are you guys doing right now? And he goes, we're legitimately walking on the bus to get on a plane and head up north. The LSU football team headed to the White House Friday. They're going to be celebrating their national championship win. So award season continues. So Aranda is news. Cool thing to go to the White House, and then this drops. Arrest warrant issued for Odell Beckham Jr. after video shows locker room butt slap. Just want to make sure I had an emphasis on that last one. The locker room butt slap. There's a ton of different things to get into about it, and let's work backwards here on the Odell Beckham Jr. thing. This is not ultimately going to hurt LSU. LSU is going to do the right thing with compliance. The money's going to be returned. It won't be an issue. It's really not going to hurt Odell Beckham Jr., right? Even though his name gets all of these headlines, he still loves the headlines. That's the whole reason why he was acting the fool all week long during that lead up to the game. So it really doesn't hurt Odell because can he catch the ball in the NFL? He can. That's why he makes a whole lot of money. Actually, what it's going to hurt is if I'm an NFL player that wants access to my college team, That's probably why you're going to be upset with Odell Beckham Jr., because they're going to look at guys like Odell Beckham Jr. having all of this deal, right? The butt slap, which leads to the battery charge, and then now the paying the players, which of course the money's going to be returned. All of that is what's going to cause the next, time Derrick Henry wants to show up on a sideline or any other player. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, we've had issues before. And that's something that needs to be rectified. So if you're an NFL football player and you want to go to a college game and have great access and you don't get it, you need to blame OBJ. A lot of your phone calls coming up, 855-242-PAUL. Let's take a look at the guests that we're going to have over the next couple of hours here on the show, because we got some good ones coming up. Nate Oates, wonder if he's going to be wearing the hard hat or maybe eating a Nate dog. That's the new things over at Alabama football, or basketball, rather. He'll be here at 3:30 Eastern. Pat Forty will join us over at 4:30. Talk about the way too early, but never too early, top 25 for next year. And T-Bob Hebert, 5 p.m. at Eastern, ESPN Radio. He's been having fun. I wonder if he still has a little bit of a voice left after those last couple of days. All right, let's go in and take your phone calls right now. Let's go Louisiana Dan. Welcome into the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Louisiana Dan?
Hey, Peter Burns. Best host for this time right now. A homer. I'm glad to talk to you.
It's good to be an LSU fan. I will say that in the least. What do you got for me, Dan?
Well, one question. I'd heard that, a couple really, but Joe Moorhead, they're saying it's going to have been talking about being an offensive coordinator at LSU. Have you heard that?
No. In fact, the latest thing, if I'm not mistaken, I need to get confirmation, is that Joe Moorhead was going to head up to Oregon as the OC. But, of course, I've been in kind of the LSU haze for the last couple of days trying to get out from under that, and flight issues as well, too. So I don't see that being the future.
Did you hear that?
I know that was one of the rumors with Joe Brady, of course, being hired by the Carolina Panthers, and that they're going to be losing him. But, no, Joe Moorhead will not be the offensive coordinator for the LSU Tigers coming up next year, Dan.
Right. Well, that's okay. Peter, I have to brag on LSU's defense. A lot of people are saying they're one of the best teams ever, and the defense is what is lacking. But, wow, the last 4 games, and actually after Bama, they were lights out on defense.
Dan, to ask for that, the last thing here, and thank you so much for the phone call, Dan. I know as you're still recovering from that excitement of LSU winning the national championship. It was a couple of different things. The best thing that could have happened to LSU this season, outside of Joe Burrow and Joe Brady coming together, was the fact when Rob Mullins looked into the camera and said, "You are not the best team in the country. You are not the most complete team in the country." That lit a different fire under LSU. And, of course, the numbers were incredible for LSU. There's no doubt about it, and it's going to go down as one of the greatest seasons in college football history with Burrow and Brady and Ensminger and that whole cast. But without LSU's defense really stepping up in the first 15 minutes of that ball game, then I don't know if LSU gets so far into a hole that they're not able to come back. The fact that they were able to hold Trevor Lawrence to some early punts and just minimize it to a field goal here and there, I'm looking at Chris Story and saying that should have been 21-0, 28-0 right off the bat. But LSU did enough to kind of say, hey, calm, right, chill out. We'll go ahead and tread water. And sure enough, Joe Burrow started making those adjustments, and the rest is history. Dan, thanks so much for the phone call, man. I appreciate it, and go enjoy the LSU Tigers parade in a couple of days. Let's go, Andre in Atlanta. Welcome into the Paul Finebaum Show with Peter Burns. What's happening, Andre?
Peter, where are you from over there? You from Port Allen, Plaquemine? Where are you?
The other side of the bridge, my man. I am from Port Allen, Louisiana, in the 225. Yes, sir.
Well, I used to work in Plaquemine, but I used to live in Denham. Look, listen, if Paul Finebaum is Coach Finebaum, can we call you the special team coach or the offensive coordinator?
I just call me the guy that holds Finebaum's clipboard, and I'll be fine with that. Like Matt Flynn made a great career of that in the NFL. Paul's a legend. I'll just collect the paycheck and be there when he wants to take a day off or so.
Okay, say it loud. Hold that title. Listen, man, I sure hate that Odell Beckham did what he did. It makes, sports look bad. It makes the SEC, the perception. That's what people think of the conference anyway. And it's like you were stating earlier, this is going to make people think twice about letting former athletes come back to support their alma mater because of what he did. And it just, and I like Odell Beckham, I really do, but it's not about him. It's about the team and the victory and the national championship win. But he made it about himself, and that's just not right, Peter.
Andre, you nailed it, and because this is the one thing about this whole LSU team, and the reason why they won a national championship, it was the team mentality, right? It was Ed Ogeron going, it's not about me, it's about the team. It was Steve Ensminger going, it's not about me or Joe Brady, it's about this offense. Joe Burrow said the same exact thing. And so really it was the actions that were antithesis of what Odell had done, which is the reason why LSU had so much success this year, that it wasn't a me-first mentality. Like Jamar Chase did. Welcome back, Paul Finebaum Show. For those of you watching us over here on SEC Network, I'm Peter Burns, in for Paul. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. We're one of the things, guys, that I really want to get into about the Odell Beckham Jr. thing. It's when I see it, I didn't know how big of a deal it was. Now, I saw it right after the press conference, and, people started kind of tweeting this out. But the way that this has taken some legs, Brams and Coobs, this all of a sudden has become the story that lives on for the national championship game, which is unfair, guys.
Completely unfair and unfortunate. I mean, leading into the game, we were talking about LSU. If they beat Clemson, will this be the greatest season? You got the Heisman Trophy winner, the Coach of the Year, and literally everything has been kind of sucked out of it almost immediately. The athletic office had to answer questions. They've had to throw it out. Instead of celebrating
less than 24 hours
and Joe Burrow and having this send-off, people were just focusing on this because, Odell wants it to be about Odell, and so he makes it about that. And it's so frustrating, especially in the SEC West, where finally LSU conquered Alabama, and you went through and you have this great year. And this is what people are talking about a couple days later. Like, as a fan, I mean, is it driving you nuts?
What it does, it upsets me for this reason, right? Is the idea that you should have had all this talk. You should have had 4 or 5 days, heck, 2 weeks of nonstop conversations. The number one team of all time, the number one quarterback of all time, the best head coaching job of all time, the murderer's row that they put in. And what it did now at that point is it basically cut your spotlight in basically in half, really, because now all these articles now have a new angle. And it also proves to another thing is for LSU, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I love that phrase because I think it's so true. For the longest time, Alabama has had to wear that crown where everybody's going to come after you. And there was nothing that was unlikable about this LSU team. I mean, for a lot of reasons, they liked Burrow, they liked Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they liked Ed Ogeron. And when it came down to it, now they have some reason to get upset with the LSU Tigers, fair or not. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum, taking more of your phone calls. We had a crazy hoops night. Nate Oates of Alabama, their head coach, going to join us in a couple of minutes. But let's go back to the phone lines we go. 855-242-PAUL. We'll go to Austin, Louisiana. What's happening, Austin?
How's it going, Peter?
Living the dream, man. What's going on with you?
So I just wanted to take this time to vent on national television. First off, I'm a huge Bama fan. I live right here on the north side of Baton Rouge, so you can imagine the emotional roller coaster that we've been going through as Crimson Tide fate that lives in North Baton Rouge at this time of the year. It's kind of crazy. But first off, I wanted to give a big congrats to the Bama basketball team. Like I said, I'm a Bama follower through and through, not just football. So big shout out to Nate Oates and company on the hardwood. But I really wanted to get into the football aspect of things. A lot of these LSU, faithful are hard on Bama right now. I think it's hilarious that they beat Alabama, a month or so ago, month and a half, 2 months ago, and literally on the north side of Baton Rouge, fireworks shot off. And I was in awe about how big of a win it was to them. And they win the national championship the other night, and you'd have thought around town they had just beaten Texas A&M or Kentucky. No fireworks, no crazy, celebration, at least outside of New Orleans. But I've been trying to tell these people, what Alabama has done over the course of the last decade and a couple of years, even more, 11, 12 years, is so impressive. And they are now fixing to see that. I think LSU is staring an 8-4, 9-3 best next year record right in the face due to the simple fact that They're losing Joe Brady. They're losing Joe Burrow. They're losing 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. They're losing Patrick Queen. They're losing Grant Delpit. They're losing their best receiver. And they're losing all that to the NFL. And they're now fixing to see, in my opinion, how impressive it is exactly what Nick Saban and staff has been able to do over the course of this dynasty that some people think is dead. I think it's still very much alive, as you've seen in the bowl game and what we have coming back. And again, I think it's very impressive what Alabama's done. And I think LSU they're living in a reality right now where it's great, everything's rainbows, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, they're fixing to see exactly how impressive it is that what we're doing at Alabama right now in this dynasty in the football world. They're fixing to see exactly how impressive that is going forward because they win the national championship this year, rightfully so. They're very impressive. But at the end of the day, they're looking at 8-4 dead in the face next year. And Bama hasn't had an 8-win season. They haven't had less than 10 wins in the last 11 years. So, and we've done that by losing offense coordinators, losing Heisman Trophy winners. You can see right now that one of the best running backs in the nation in NFL just came from Alabama. So, I mean, we're losing these guys every year, and we're having replacements at offense coordinator. We're having replacements at defense coordinator, and yet we're still finding a way to be in the conversation to play for a college football national championship every single year. And LSU, I don't believe, is even going to be in that conversation come week 7 or week 8 next year. I think that's what kind of season they're looking at. And just wanted to kind of get that off my chest and see what it is you had to say about that. Thanks.
Austin, I appreciate the phone call. There's a lot to unpack here. And what I want to do right now is that, first of all, if you think the Alabama, quote, dynasty is dead, you're an absolute flat-out idiot. Turn off the television right now. Turn off the radio. Just pull over to the side of the road. Go listen to Yacht Rock or whatever, right? I mean, when people say Alabama's dynasty is dead, they'll be dead when all of a sudden it's a 6-6 season. It's a 7-5 season. That ain't happening down in T-Town anytime soon. So enough. Any person that says the Bama dynasty is dying or dead, then just choose better friends. That's all I'm asking for. The thing is you went back and you talked about how they were popping fireworks when LSU beat Alabama. LSU didn't win the national championship game in the Superdome. Now, they didn't win it back in playing in Oklahoma in the semifinal game. LSU won the national title when they went into Tuscaloosa and they beat Alabama. It was that exorcism that they needed to have. They had to have this put the demons to bed moment. And I vividly remember talking to Ed Ogeron and players and staffers after that game, and the rest of it was gravy. I will never forget walking into the Superdome right before the national championship game on Monday night, and I looked around and said, I don't gamble, but I would put every single Finebaum's dollars of his $75 million he makes a year on LSU in that game, because it was not about the game. Everybody in that building was there for the celebration. The national championship game was won against Alabama. And if you're a Bama fan right now, you should wear that as a feather in your cap. That LSU knew that they were beating Clemson. They knew they just had to beat Alabama to get there. And by the way, the SEC West going to be wide open coming up next season. Let's get another phone call in here. Brent is in Alabama. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Brent?
Hey, Peter. Hey, a couple of days ago I called about OBJ, and I'm pretty sure I was like the first person to talk about it on TV. And I brought up the cash situation, and Paul, he took and just said, I think it's fake money, and just kind of blew me off a little bit. Okay? I almost, I'm sad he's not in today, but I kind of want an apology because, it's huge. The whole story, all the social media is talking about it. It's on every network. It's on every show, and I don't have a problem with college players getting paid. I don't. It's not I'm not taking the moral high ground on this. It's just how stupid do you got to be to do it in front of everybody, and how hungry for attention do you got to be, but anyways.
Well, Brent, that's what it was. And on behalf of Paul, I'll have a proxy apology, is that the first thing that it came out is LSU says, hey, listen, well, this thing might have been fake money. And for those who had seen it, they had no idea. They're trying to figure out what was going on.
Right.
And that was really kind of what was told to everybody, including Paul. So I don't think by any means Paul was calling you an idiot, or no need to really apologize because you're a loyal listener to the show. But I think it was just a matter of what was out there. And then they investigated it, and they realized, all right, no, it was Odell trying to be, get on tele. Odell wanted this, right? This is what Odell wanted. And that's the problem that brings LSU down at this point, because it had been such a great team atmosphere to this point. Why would you have one athlete doing that?
Right.
And again, all it's going to hurt is not Odell, whose star is going to be big because he's a star and actually probably helps right now because he's getting all the headlines. It's not going to hurt LSU compliance related because they're going to fix that issue and all the money is going to be returned. It's just going to hurt the next Odells that want to get in and have this access to celebrate with their teams. Now a lot of teams are going to be like, let's just pump the brakes because we don't want to have this stealing our thunder in case something happens.
Well, I'll accept your apology and tell Paul I love his big juicy ears. I appreciate it. See you.
I love it, Brent. Thanks, man. Hey, we got a lot more of your phone calls coming up. In fact, we're going to open it up a little bit more to your tweets and your phone calls. Is Nate Oates? We're going to push him back another 30 minutes, so he's going to be joining us at 4 Eastern on the heels of his unbelievable win against the Auburn Tigers. Remember, South Carolina defeated Kentucky in a wild, wild season in college hoops so far. Anything you want to talk about? I'm here for you. 855-242-PAUL. That's 855. All of the numbers, 242-7285. Hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN.
Finebaum now. 855-242-7285. That's 855-242-PAUL. This is the Paul Finebaum Show.
All right, welcome back to Paul Finebaum Show. I need help, y'all. I got to be honest with you. Coming in, I was just to the show today. When I knew I was hosting, I'm like, you know what? Here's a good topic. Let's talk about Burrow leaving, Tua leaving. Who are the top 5 returning quarterbacks? I legit, Brams, I want to bring you in on this conversation. Legit looked at this for a good 15 minutes. I can't figure out my top 5. I like legit. I put 75 different names.
Let's work through it. Let's work through it right here, live on the air. What do y'all say?
But I'm fine. I mean, give me a name and let me try to figure this out.
Kellen Mond.
I think Kellen Mond's the chalk.
He's going to have he's got the most passing yards.
Yeah, but
coming in.
Yeah, but again, but so what's so funny? In years past, we've always been like, oh, I mean, it's definitely Tua. Oh, it might be Jared Stidham, right. Or I don't even know if we were talking about Joe Burrow before
Jeremy
this
Johnson,
season. Yeah, Jeremy Johnson, everybody's favorite media day Heisman winner. But I don't know. I mean, I go back and look at Kellen Mond, how great were you against LSU when you needed to have it? And you lost 50-7, and you got flat out embarrassed.
All-time LSU team.
But does that speak to the lack of other candidates that we have?
John Rice Plumlee. They're just
John
young.
Rice. Inexperienced. I love John Rice Plumlee.
All right, so you putting him. I would imagine, and now with Lane Kiffin's offense, right. you would imagine that he would probably be high on that list.
So we got Plumlee and Mond on the list. I'm going to go with Jamie Newman, the transfer quarterback down in Georgia.
The Wake Forest transfer that comes in.
Yeah.
That would be intriguing to me.
Good stats. Two-way player.
But it also depends if Georgia actually can develop an offensive coordinator.
Right,
if Coley can use him properly.
They've got some mental hurdles to get over there, obviously, as well as just the physical.
Yeah, I think with the numbers when he had big games, he was able to, you go back to the Iron Bowl, he was solid. He was solid on the last drive against Auburn, and I think they're going to allow him to do more under Chad Morris. I think Nix has to be in there in the top 5, but again, I need some help. Kyle
Trask. Kyle Trask, I think, has to be in your top 5.
Garantano?
Wow. You could tell Lou's not directing today because that would have been one of the numbers. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. For those of us listening on radio, we just did a TV-only segment, which was give me the top 5 quarterbacks coming into SEC play in 2020. I don't know who the hell it's going to be. I got to be honest with you. Normally, I'll come in here with an opinion. I won't back down from it. I'm trying to look at 1 through 5 next year with Burrow being gone, Tua being gone. How do I rank the top 5 QBs next year? Kellen Mond, John Rice Plumlee, Garantano. I was going to say Felipe Franks, but he's going to be gone. Kyle Trask. Help me do that on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. In the meantime, let's get more of your phone calls right now. Matt is in South Carolina. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for Paul. What's up, Matt?
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Man, doing great, man. Back hosting this show, which is always my favorite thing to do. How you doing?
Yeah, I was actually calling to talk to Paul. I told the guys off air, but you're probably a great candidate to ask because it's a couple of LSU questions. Congratulations on the win, by the way.
Thank you, man.
I want to preface it first by saying I'm a Clemson fan, but I try to remove any bias. I don't really have a bias towards LSU, and be objective. With the OBJ stuff, I look at it as just one more, it's a cumulative thing. I was a little shocked, or I don't know the word, but basically when I saw the next song, that was the first kind of saying, "Oh wow, that's kind of interesting." And then the apparel that Joe Burrows wore after the game. I mean, everybody can do their own research for that. And then it was the OBJ thing. So it was kind of cumulative for me. And I don't know a lot about LSU. I followed them. I followed them a little bit under Les Miles. I really like Ed Orgeron. I stayed up after the game, which was surprising for me, about an hour and a half, watching the press conferences, watching them celebrate. Normally, we lose a game like that, I'm probably going to bed.
Yeah.
But I really like Ed Orgeron. Maybe it's the whole interim thing, like Dabo or whatnot. But it's hard not to root for him.
Sure.
There's no denying Joe Burrow's greatness. But I'm a father of two boys, and I can't help. First, I would be ecstatic if my son ever did anything like that. But if I saw him with that apparel, I'd say you got to take that off.
Yeah, and Matt, what you're talking about is a couple of different things. One, obviously, they played neck in the stadium. That's something that LSU has done over the last couple of years, and they refuse to do it over in Tiger Stadium anymore because the student section ends up adding some lyrics to it that are not necessarily safe for work or safe for kids. And it was one of those things. It was a celebration in the fourth quarter. They're like, we're just playing neck. And you know what? It is what it is. I can't say anything about that. As far as,
So the administration is trying to stop it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The administration has, and I don't know if this was a band director gone rogue or whatnot, but the administration says, no, we're not doing that. And a lot of that comes down from Ed Orgeron as well, too. I mean, listen, there was a hat given to Joe Burrow by a fan that had something.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like, hey, he printed out his own hat and he was like, hey, look at what I'm wearing to the camera. This is something that was given to him, and, hey, if a fan does that, he's not going to have an issue with. So, but going back to the Odell deal, too, I think that is just kind of one. I mean, I saw probably 40 different NFL guys or LSU kind of celebrities on the sideline. He's basically the only one I saw acting up. So that's what's so upsetting about the Odell deal is that you had the actions of one that have kind of spoiled it for so many that were doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I don't look at that Odell like a representation of LSU football. I'm looking at a cumulative thing. And I reference, and one of the reasons why I want to talk to Paul is because Paul is so hard on Miami culture. And I, for me, the things I think about is I look, as a Clemson fan, I look back at Florida State under Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
And you had the paintball, you had the standing up in the cafeteria, you had the crab legs, and we see where that culture led. So my question to you as an LSU alumni, and I believe alumni, right? At least, you grew up, you're familiar with the program.
Yeah.
Do you think is this the culture? Because I don't.
Matt, let me and I know the gist that you're talking about. Is this the culture for LSU? And I will tell you this, Jack Mariucci, who is the strength and conditioning, equipment manager guy, and does a lot of stuff for LSU football. He put together kind of a spreadsheet and that lists like the best character. And they came in and talks about the different recruits he's had. And he's come out with this character matrix. And believe it or not, I think a lot of college campuses and a lot of football programs are going to use it because it goes in like, what kind of kid are you recruiting? And he said this class that LSU had in 2017, 2 years ago, was the best he had ever seen at LSU as far as character, as far as guys that want to be a part of the team. And I think that's why this dream season came together. Sure, you're always going to want 5 stars, but sometimes it's better to have a 3-star that actually fits your profile and your program. And I think Ed Orgeron is the first person to admit that, and I think that's why he had success. I ran on because I got to get to the hotline anytime Jim in Tuscaloosa makes a phone call. Jim, Happy New Year, my man. How you doing?
Same to you, Peter. But you know what? I really maybe I'm going to blow your mind by telling you this, but I don't mind telling the truth about things. I didn't even know. I heard a friend of mine. I heard Alabama was going to play Auburn. I said, well, I'm not even going to tune that in because I can't stand to see Alabama get killed on any field, basketball, football, or whatever. I just didn't even think about it. I heard nothing about it today, and then all of a sudden I hear you say I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't. And I called a friend while I was waiting on you, and he said, well, Alabama didn't play. Auburn didn't play great. They missed a lot of free throws, missed a lot of threes. What did they do, Peter? I didn't see it or hear anything.
Jim, the what it is was, first of all, that you had Cairo Lewis kind of step out and become a star. I think that was the one thing. The other thing that was interesting is that I know a lot of Finebaum fans, a lot of just SEC fans go, all right, I'll kind of eventually, I'm in this football malaise, I'll get to basketball eventually. But what it came down to is I think the home court advantage at Coleman Coliseum, which was a game changer, and it's part of the enthusiasm that Nate Oates has brought. We're going to talk to him in 20 minutes here on this show. And Jim, I think that's what kind of shut down Auburn. Auburn was going to eventually lose. I just didn't think that it was going to be to Alabama. And if you remember earlier in SEC basketball media days, it ended up being Anthony McLemore who came out and says, I can't wait to see the look of disappointment from the Auburn fans when we win in Alabama. I think that was just a little.
Whoa! Who said that?
Yeah, it was McLemore on Auburn's team that said that. Now it was kind of fun. It was flippant. It wasn't him trying to talk all this huge trash. But what it was it's something that Nate Oates and Alabama players remembered. And when it came down to it, it wasn't a whipping. It was a whooping, Jim. And that's why I think you and a lot of people will look at this and go, I need to pay attention to what Nate Oates is bringing. It's a different energy.
Well, let me say this to you. I told somebody the other day after I heard. I haven't even followed them because when I found out, I just hadn't followed Alabama basketball much this year, so hardly any at all. Well, anyway, I'm not that interested in. I was, but anyway, I was before. But now, and then I thought, well, I told somebody, so it looks like. I heard or saw that the record up to about a week ago was not below average or average. I don't even know what 3-3 or 5-5 or something like that. I don't know what. Wasn't a winning record though. I said, well, I'm just the guy's another failure, I guess, and it didn't look good to me. So I said, here we go again with another average coach. I had no clue the guy looks like he's as good as he is, and tell him I said, congratulations. And let me say this, Peter. I literally pulled. I've never pulled for Auburn in my life. I was just pulling, and Finebaum knows, I was pulling as hard as I can pull, as any Auburn fan could pull in that semifinal, in that Final Four, where they should have won that last game against Virginia, wasn't it? And they lost. Yep. I was pulling for them to win it all. I thought they had the most fabulous, most exciting team I've ever seen, really, in college last year. So who did they lose to where they just become not as good as they were, not near as good, obviously, as they were last year.
No, but that's the credit. Like, I don't want to talk about how they lost. I mean, obviously, they lose Bryce Brown, they lose Jared Harper. But
what players from last year did they lose?
But Bryce Brown and Jared Harper were by far the best two guys.
Are they gone?
And Chume Okeke is gone as well too. But I got to run because we're up against the break. But we're going to talk to Coach Nate Oates about that here in about 15 minutes.
Thing, Peter, hold on. Is that game going to be replayed?
I would assume it will be. It sure as heck needs to be. I would check SECSports.com for it.
Is it on SEC Network?
I would double check and make sure. I do not have the local listings available.
Give me an announcement on the air. I want to hear it.
I would tell you what. Like I said, it was 83-64. I can't do my professional broadcasting voice, but I would tell you this again. It wasn't just a whipping; it was a whooping, and that's the reason why Nate Oates is excited.
I want to see it on replay. What about? Find out if you can. Tell me when it's going to be on again on replay.
Jim, I tell you what, I will look it up only for you. My New Year's resolution was to love every moment in life, and for you, I will look it up and I will tweet you. How about that?
Thank you very much.
Jim in Tuscaloosa, everybody. Thanks for the phone call. He will be joining us. Nate Oates will do it. And honestly, it was just great defense. They shut down Javon McCormick. Samir Dowdy only had 6 points early in that game. And all of a sudden, you could tell when the crowd was getting into it, it was a difference maker. And now, same thing that happened in Colonial Life Arena last night. South Carolina had a home court advantage. LSU's starting to get a home court advantage. And a lot of that is because of what Kentucky has brought to this conference and what Bruce Pearl brought down to Auburn, is that the fans are realizing basketball is here to stay in the SEC. And by the way, it's wide open this year. More of your phone calls coming up next on a wide open version of the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns, you can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Welcome back to Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Paul Finebaum. And you guys know, over my years of hosting this show, anytime I can take a shot at Greg McElroy, I choose to do it. But this time it's actually a legit reason. If I'm not mistaken, we were supposed to have the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nate Oates, on this program. Is that not factually correct, Brams and Coobs?
That is correct, and we still will.
Right. We will be having him on a phone call.
Not in the original fashion that we planned to.
Right. The original fashion was to be 3:30 Eastern. He was going to be doing a television hit. Like,
correct.
There's the television monitor. He looks at me.
Right.
We ask these questions. It's great video.
We have the camera on campus that they use down there.
Now, why has that changed, Brams? Could you tell the dear people about this?
Well, I'm looking up right now, and I'm watching Greg McElroy.
Yes.
We're watching
in the Bureau Cam room.
That Nate Oates would have been using right around this time.
And basically saying, I'm not leaving.
So
he's taping something on some other show.
He legit. So that's what McElroy is doing right now.
There he is. It's live. You are looking live.
You are looking
this was
live,
supposed to be Nate Oates.
This is McElroy. Let's pretend like what he's saying. So obviously, Peter Burns is a much better looking and a much more accomplished broadcaster than I am, don't you think? Hey, Greg.
All right.
No. What?
We don't, he doesn't know we're watching there, by the way. That was a little voyeuristic moment. Sorry, G Money Mac.
That's the last time I ever want to pick in on Greg McElroy in a voyeuristic way. I'll be
right. I mean, that could have been dangerous. He's we
you never know if he's
going to
flip a bird
right
or
now.
something.
Yeah. He's like, oh, you guys are fools.
By the way, we have these television pods. I want to have that 30 seconds that we just had McElroy on air. And I want to replay that in every television pod. And every single time we come back, we're going to fake a conversation that Greg McElroy is going to have.
What's he talking about?
Yeah.
I like that.
Actually,
it's a great point. We could just mouth over.
Yeah.
It's like bad lip reading.
Yeah.
Bad lip reading.
Yeah, you want to know why I think Brand? Yeah, I mean, seriously, guy.
He's answering now. Let's get it. We can
really,
do bad lip reading real quick.
If you think about it, I'm just like Tua. Tua's career, my career.
Tua's career was just a little bit less than my career. I won the national championship for a whole season.
We will have Nate Oates, top of the hour, on the phone. Can't wait.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, back to the Paul Finebaum Show here. I am Peter Burns. We've been having some fun at Greg McElroy's expense. When you can do that, you absolutely take an opportunity to do such. We're going to be joined by Nate Oates, the head coach of Alabama Crimson Tide, who they had a whooping of Auburn yesterday, 83-64. He's going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes. But let's go ahead and get your phone calls right now. PA is in Texas. What's happening, PA?
Well, I just got a little upset. Blood pressure went up a little bit when that gentleman, Alabama fan from, I believe he's from north of Baton Rouge is where he said he was from.
Yeah, I think he said kind of Shreveport area, northern Louisiana. That's correct.
Okay. Well, Alabama, we all are reminded daily of how much Alabama's done in football. We all know how many championships they've won. We're reminded daily. And everybody in the SEC, I'm a Texas Longhorn fan, so I don't have a dog in this fight.
I'm sorry to hear that, PA. Are you okay?
How great Alabama is. Let LSU have their moment. I mean, it's not, you don't have to come on and start talking about how great Alabama is in basketball. We beat Auburn last night, this and that. How many national championships we have versus how many LSU has. How many times we've beaten LSU the past 20 years and since Nick Saban arrived. Let LSU go. Let them have their moment in the sunshine. Let them have they earned it. They deserve it. And 15-0 has never been done before. Many of the things that LSU did this year has never been done before. And believe me, I am no LSU fan, but just let them have their time in the sunshine. That's all I ask Alabama fans.
PA, thank you for the phone call, my friend. And I would tell you this, they're also looking forward to having Sam Ehlinger back in Austin next year for the Longhorns. Remember, Texas is going to be making the trip to Baton Rouge, and that's one of the big-time non-conference games to circle coming up next year. Let's go to Louisiana. We head to Chris. Thanks for joining Peter Burns in for the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Paul. Paul. Hey, Peter, I just want to tell you, I've always enjoyed watching you on your show, and you and Tony, and so it's just great to talk
to a fellow Louisianan. And what a nice comment that what is his name, PA?
Yeah, PA was saying LSU fans enjoy it, man. I think, Chris, that's fair. LSU fans know to enjoy a little football and food and family, to say the least.
Exactly. I thought that was really a class. What he said was about, why does Alabama want to, this has been the greatest season of all time, and we know Nick Saban is great, and we know where Alabama is going to be. But it's kind of funny, Tony. Peter. I get you all mixed up. Peter, it's kind of funny that he mentioned that if you want to compare Nick Saban about what we're going to do, he said we wouldn't win but 8 games or 9. Well, go back and compare what Nick Saban did at LSU after he won the national championship. He didn't go out and win the SEC the next year. He didn't go out and have a fantastic year. I think we might have only won 8 or 9 games, and that's with Nick Saban.
LSU was 9-3 coming off after the national championship game back in 2003, where they won it in New Orleans.
Great. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Peter, because that's going ahead. That's telling it. All right, we're not comparing, Nick Saban after he's been at Alabama for 10 years. We're talking about what did he do his 4th year, and so I think Coach O, can match that. He's already beat Nick Saban as far as his tenure and the games he's won at LSU in the same length of time that Coach Saban won. And so I think you need to remember that. And like I say, what difference does it make? You better not worry about LSU next year. You better worry about Auburn and everybody else, because every team in the SEC is going to be better next year, except for LSU. And that's because you can't be better than we were this year. So we're not going to be as good as we were this year for sure. And sure, we've got 7 players leaving, probably 4 more, and that's going to be tough to replace. And, I know we're not going to be as good. And, it's kind of like this, Paul. Me and you, Peter, can talk about that. But, we don't like somebody else telling us that.
That's right. I would say, Chris, thank you for the phone call, because I'm up against the break. And you're right. But here's the big thing for LSU. They didn't capitalize in 2007. Les Miles did not capitalize on a national championship game. In fact, kind of just said, all right, well, the players will just show up now. I will tell you this, Ed Orgeron has spent every waking moment on phone calls that he can make to recruits to make sure what happened in 2007 of LSU kind of falling behind and not capitalizing on a national championship isn't going to help. And that's, again, you're going to learn a lot about what Nick Saban has done at Alabama with what happens with LSU in the next couple of years. Because now everybody's going to be coming for that crown. 7 guys, probably Caleb Vaughn and even Thaddeus Moss are going to be leaving. Dave Aranda's probably going to Baylor. Joe Brady already lost. What are you going to do? Because guess what? If you want to be Alabama, you compete for a national championship next year. You don't go 8-4. Can the Tigers do that? We'll talk more about it coming up in the next hour. Nate Oates, Alabama head coach. Welcome back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Paul Finebaum. And I love the fact that when we start getting past football season, college hoops is right here. And there was no better exciting finish, maybe to all of the hoop season, than what happened in a sold-out Colonial Life Arena coming up on Wednesday. And right now, the star of it, Jermaine Couisnard, joining us. And Jermaine, when you look at it, I got to know, it was a bank shot in front of a packed crowd, a game winner. Did you call bank?
Nah.
You didn't need to, right?
Nah, to be honest, I thought it was an air ball. I thought I shot it too hard. But if you listen to the video, it hit the glass pretty hard.
Hey, all I know is that it went in, man, and that's the most important thing. You see the crowd start going crazy, fans going crazy, but after quickly ties that ball game up, take me through the huddle and what Frank Martin was said and why you were the dude.
To be honest, he told us if I can't get open, just try to get to the outlet spot to make a play. And if not, he told Keyshawn to come up and screen for me. And if his man get above him, to slip out of it and I throw the ball to him and he go make a play. But it didn't go like that. I guess I got it. And then my man gave me enough room to give me a couple dribbles. And I just took a dribble and I just pulled up. and I seen it go off the glass.
And you call game, my man. I mean, that's the crazy part about it. I don't know how anybody wasn't just on you, like, you know, white on rice, because you're sitting there, you got 23 points going into that. Did you feel it into that night? What was special about it?
Just my teammates being confident in me. Just keep on letting me being aggressive, keep letting me being aggressive. So that made me just feel like I'm going to have a great day today.
Obviously, it was a great day, but even before that, because you got an opportunity for your first career start, what did Frank Martin and the rest of the team say to you even before the game that said, hey, you were going to be the guy starting?
They knew that I've been practicing well, just being a leader on the court and off the court, just helping my teammates, giving them confidence when they feeling down about themselves. So he's just telling me just go out and play my game and just run the team.
What's up, y'all? Welcome into another hour of the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns back in the big host chair with you. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Has been a busy day. LSU players and their team are en route to visit the White House. They got into a bus crash. One of those buses, it's okay, nothing is serious, and it was some of the personnel on that staff. We'll keep you updated on that. We'll talk a lot more about your phone calls on SEC football. But right now, Coach Nate Oates is joining us right now here, Alabama Crimson Tide. And, Coach, it was a whooping yesterday, 83-64. The hard hats were on. Before we even get to the game, what was the environment like in Coleman as you were stepping into the arena?
Yeah, it was big time. That was the first sellout since I've been here. So it was nice. It was good to see the students from Florida, Sealy, and I mean, they got loud. We needed them to get loud. They got loud for us when we needed it.
And when you said they needed it, you were talking about how this team needed kind of that punch-through win. And everyone needs that. In fact, we had Jim in Tuscaloosa, who is a renowned caller here on the Paul Finebaum Show. He goes, you know what, I'm sitting up and I'm paying attention to Alabama basketball now because of the style and because of that win. What did that win do for your program?
No, I think it proved that, you know, we can actually beat some of the better teams. I mean, they're fourth in the country. We had hung with Kentucky for most of the game. We had been up big on Florida. You know, we're up 9 at Penn State, and we just couldn't get the win. So we finally got the win. Now the next step is we got to get some. You know, we got to rattle off some wins, period, and then we got to get a big road win. Is where I think we need to go from here.
Coach Nate Oates joining us here on the Paul Finebaum Show with Peter Burns. Coach, how much about coaching kids is about belief? Because there's no doubt that, you know, Cairo Lewis Jr., of course, is a very talented player. Alex Reese, Jones, you can go through the Petty. All of these guys have the talent, or else they wouldn't be playing here in the SEC. But how do they believe that they're that good?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think confidence is a huge thing with kids. So you got to instill them. They got to believe that the system's going to work. They got to know that the coach believes in them. And I mean, we talk to them all the time about your reps are going to really build your confidence up, get up, put shots up. So I think our guys, I told them before the game, you know, I think we've put the work in. We've done enough over the last 9 months that we deserve to win this. Now we just got to go out and play hard in them for 40 minutes. So I think our kids believed it, and they did it, and now they got more confidence going into the next games.
I know that Greg Byrne was full of confidence when he hired you to come down and take over this program. Now, it just means more, and you're starting to understand what this Alabama-Auburn rivalry is. I mean, going even back to media days when you had Anthony McLemore of Auburn saying, I can't wait to see the look of disappointment in the eyes for the Alabama fans when we come in there and win. Now, it was kind of a playful shot, but how much of that kind of just resonated with your players leading into that game?
Oh, yeah. They knew what he said, and I mean, I agree. Like it's a rivalry. He knew it. I don't think there was any, you know, intention in it, but it definitely added a little bit to the rivalry, which is great. I liked it. So I'm sure the game at their place will be a heated, intense game, and we're gonna have to bring everything we got there. So I mean, it's good. I mean, it's, you know, you hear a lot about the rivalry until you actually get in it and playing it for the first time. It's, you know, it's all hearsay, but man, that was an intense game last night. I love it. I told our guys that's why we put all the time in that we do to play big games like that.
And you should love it. You're the first time an Alabama head basketball coach has beaten Auburn in their first opportunity to do so. So that's a feather in your cap. And talking about caps, this hard hat mentality. We saw a lot of hard hats in the stadium in that game. What is the story behind the hard hat, and why is it important to Alabama basketball going forward?
Yeah, so we started doing it at Buffalo. It honestly came from one of my assistants was Lindsey Hunter, that played for the Pistons back when they were kind of gritty and, winning the world. They won the NBA championship based on kind of the whole hard hat. And he made a comment after one of the games. He told the team, like, we're not blue collar enough around here. And it kind of got my mind going. And I came in the next day. I don't even think the players knew what blue collar was. So I kind of explained what blue collar is, and then that kind of led from one thing to the next. And we actually got a real hard hat from a construction site in Buffalo and put the Buffalo Bull on it and started a point system. And we kind of grade players out on, we call them blue collar points, just kind of the tough, nitty gritty deflections, charges, floor dives, rebounds, all types of stuff like that. And we try to grade out effort is really what we do. Like, put your hard hat on, come to work, and put the work in. So we've been giving it, this is the third or fourth year now we've been doing it, where we give a hard hat out at the end of the game. They put it on, whoever's got the most blue collar points. So Herb Jones won it for us last night. Took a few charges, had a bunch of deflections, led us in rebounding. So just a way to honor the guy that maybe doesn't score the most points in every game, but impacts winning just as much.
And you look at it, that Herb Jones, 14 and 12 yesterday, was put up some monster numbers as well too. And I was talking to Jeff Puritan, your buddy over there, earlier this year, and I said, "Hey, what's going on? How's this team feeling?" And he says, "Hey, listen, once we get 100% healthy, this team's going to be a force to be reckoned with." Do you feel that this team is 100% healthy, and that this is just a catalyst to make a run towards an SEC title?
Yeah, we're a lot closer to it than we were we were really banged up a month and a half ago or so. So, Herb's probably 90%, where he was probably playing about 50% with his elbow earlier. Beatles still got something going on, but even he looks better, and he gave us some big minutes in the second half. And then Alex Reese has got to have surgery at the end of the year, but he's a fighter. He's a tough kid. He's going to war through. Everybody else is pretty healthy. So we're about as healthy as we're going to get, I think, and we're certainly playing a lot better. I think big problem was those guys weren't able to practice at all. We were just getting them to games. Now they can practice, and our chemistry's getting a lot better. It's hard to get better when you don't practice. So now that we've got everybody kind of playing well together, chemistry's good, practicing together, I think we can start to make a little bit of a run here.
All right, and that run would be huge for this program, and that's the reason why you were hired. Last question for you. I asked this, and I put it on Twitter, at Peter Burns ESPN. Every year I come up with my Vegas rankings for all the coaches in college football, 1 through 14 here in this conference. Where should I put you when I start doing the college basketball coaches here in this conference? 1 through 14 is the guy I want to hang out with on a Vegas trip. Are you at the top of the list? Are you at the bottom of the list? Where are you at?
I guess it depends on what you want to do in Vegas. But my guess is if it's Vegas, I'm going to be closer to 14 than 1. I'm not into too much of that stuff in Vegas. So I probably got a good guess of who maybe you would want to hang out with a little bit more than me if it's Vegas. But if you want to go watch some games on TV and hang out, maybe we can play a little blackjack or something, but I'm not getting into too much other than that.
No, that's fine with me. Now I'm old. Like a 22-year-old Peter Burns would have been a whole lot different than 40-year-old Peter Burns. So as long as I heard, I just don't challenge you to a game of pool, and I'll be in pretty good shape. Nate Oates joining us.
If we could find a pool hall there, we could hang out all night. We could shoot pool all night there.
I tell you what, if there is one talent that I want my head coach to be able to do, is play pool. Believe it or not, because if you can play pool, you're always looking at the angles. And Nate Oates, you did it. You found the angle against the Auburn Tigers, gave them their first loss of the year last year. Congratulations on that win, and let's see it go forward, all right?
All right, thanks, Peter. Next time we're together, we'll get a pool. We'll put some money on a pool game. You can come over and play in our player lounge with us.
Hey, I'm all in as long as I can have Finebaum's winnings. I'll use his paycheck to pay off my debts. Thanks.
Well, you're doing his job for him, so you may as well.
I'm in for that. Thanks, Coach. Nate Oates joining us. a huge win again, and I think that's interesting because we always look for this gap, right? And I do it as a just SEC fan myself, but as a host of how do you kind of go from a national championship game, college football season to basketball. When you have South Carolina with a huge upset in Columbia last night against Kentucky, that's one reason why. And also Alabama giving Auburn their first loss of the season. I thought that was fantastic as well, too, just as far as the parity level here in this conference. And honestly, for Bruce Pearl, I think he'll look at that and be disappointed, but it's also one less thing that his team is going to have to talk about. And it's also a learning process to be like, guess what? You can't just show up and roll the ball out and think you're better than everybody else. So in a weird way, I don't think Bruce Pearl is too hurt that they ended up losing to Alabama because he could teach from it. One quick phone call, Tennessee, we go. Jimmy, you've been patiently waiting to talk a little hoops here. What's up, man?
Peter, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I'm not really a big Orange fan, but it's really hard to watch Barnes, what he's got on the floor. They don't hustle. I don't know what the problem is. They don't have leadership like they had with the 19 season, but it's just really hard to watch, and I don't know the answer. But let me ask you this, Peter. Your question about the quarterback rankings in the SEC,
mm-hmm.
I would put Newman, Trask, and Wilson probably in my top 3. And then Jones and whoever Ed goes out and picks. Ed's going to get him a quarterback.
Well, he's already got Miles Brennan, right? So Brennan more than likely will be the kid over at LSU.
You think? Okay. And then you got Bo Nix, and then you got the kid from A&M.
Kellen Mond.
Yeah. Gantano has he can't read defenses, so Pruitt's going to have to go some other direction. I don't know if the kid Bailey's going to. As a freshman, I don't think he'll work out, not first year. But I would put Newman, Trask, and Wilson, the kid from Kentucky, as my top 3, and then drop Jones in there.
Yeah.
You don't like that?
Well, no. I mean, the issue you got to keep in mind, too, Jimmy, I'm up against the break, but you got to keep in mind that while you want Emory Jones at Florida, Kyle Trask might be the guy that ends up getting it. It might be a little 1-2 punch there. And the only issue I have with Jamie Newman, and he's the Wake Forest transfer that's going into Georgia, is what is Georgia's offense going to look like now that they lose everybody? They're going to have George Pickens, of course, as a wide receiver, but DeAndre Swift's going to be gone. It seems like, 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are going to be gone. And can James Coley put together a better offensive plan for Newman that he did have for Jake Fromm? More of those thoughts and more of your phone calls coming up on the Paul Finebaum Show. 855-242-PAUL is the number. You can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns, ESPN. And big news, I keep saying big news out of LSU, and then I start thinking, all right, which one of the 17 headlines is it within the last 72 hours? No, it's not winning the national championship game. No, it's not Odell Beckham Jr. acting like an idiot in the locker room or getting an arrest warrant for him giving a butt slap to a police officer. Now the news is not Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, leaving to go to the Carolina Panthers. It is now defensive coordinator Dave Aranda is taking his talents out to Waco, Texas, and going to be taking the place of Matt Rule, who, of course, is now headed to our town here as the Carolina Panthers head coach. And so I'm going to bring in our resident Big 12 expert, Daniel Brams, who knows everything, a big Horned Frog guy. All right, so does this scare you now? I mean, you get rid of Matt Rule, and now Dave Aranda comes in to face your team, or what?
Ain't scared. Come on now. Give me a break. You know those T-shirts in Texas ain't scared, Peter. Come on.
Why would a defensive guy go to the Big 12, though? Honest question.
I don't know. Gary Patterson's a defensive coach. The Big 12's picking up a little bit of a defensive character now.
You know what? You're right. I saw
Coach
Oklahoma
Grinch
in that game against LSU.
But all joking aside, Kubiak, I know you made that kind of as a snide remark, but think about it. All right, Chris Kleiman is a little bit more. He's not a spread it out air raid guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Matt Rule was more of a defensive minded guy. When they went with Texas Tech is no longer the Mike Leach type mentality. You could argue that Big 12 play has permeated SEC football. And now they're getting back to being a little bit more of a defensive-minded squad. It's actually a perfect deal for Dave Aranda, right? Gets paid, gets to be a head coach, and now it takes over a roster that's really kind of defensive-minded with what Matt Rule brought.
Plus, my thing is, why are we making fun of the Big 12 when the Pac-12 is right there to be made fun of anyway? But regardless, I want to spin the question back to you, Peter, because what's up with you, as a LSU guy and, with the New Orleans ties that you have?
Yeah.
Do you have some rivalry with maybe the Panthers here? They took Joe Brady now directly, and now because Matt Rule went to the Panthers, now you're losing Dave Aranda. What's
I
up
will
with that?
say this: if you're a Saints fan, it's about when were you born. And I'm 40 years old, so when I was growing up, the Saints were the Aints, and I lived in Baton Rouge, so you're a diehard LSU fan. So to me, I'm now hoping Joe Burrow goes to the Panthers, and yes, I will become a Panthers fan. Can't believe I just said that on TV. Welcome back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, and joining us right now to talk about 97 different storylines that have broken in about the last 92 hours is Pat Forty joining us. Pat, I don't even know where we start, and I guess let's go with everything that LSU has lost. It started with Joe Brady going to the Carolina Panthers, and now moments ago it appears to be confirmed that Matt Rule, who's also over at the Panthers, he left Waco, and Dave Aranda is expected to take that job. What do you make of those decisions?
Yeah, I think Baylor kicked the tires on a lot of people to replace Matt Rule. There was, looked like for a while Justin Fuente was the guy they wanted. Billy Napier from Louisiana Lafayette was in the mix. I don't know where Aranda fit on the pecking order, but he's a guy who's obviously been a very respected assistant coach. Now it's always the eternal question: how does he do taking the step over to the big chair? And it adds to the mass exodus in Baton Rouge with Joe Brady leaving and him leaving and 7 underclassmen at least so far. So a lot going on there for sure.
Yeah, you might end up seeing Kaylavon Chason and Thaddeus Moss, who will probably put their name in the hat as well. So it might be as many as 9 and a couple of coordinators. So what is the expectation for LSU football? Clearly, maybe the greatest season in college football history. What should be the expectation next year, now knowing everything that you know, Pat?
When you're at a place like LSU, you always want the expectations to remain high. That's why they made the change from Les Miles. He was a good coach. He was a successful coach. He was a championship-winning coach, but he wasn't still doing it at the level they aspired to. He couldn't beat Alabama in the latter years, and so that's why they made that move. So I don't think anybody at LSU is going to sit around and say, well, let's just take a couple of years off from being competitive. So now – It's not going to be easy, but, one of the things we know about Ed Orgeron is that he's a monster recruiter, and so he's got one good class after another good class after another good class, but they may need to call on some of the younger guys earlier with this many underclassmen leaving. There's certainly holes there, and then every bit as important, if not more, is what does he do with these staff positions, especially Brady's position. If he was as responsible as we all think for the transformation of that offense, can they continue that without him? So some big hires for Ed Orgeron to make, or if not hires, then at least staff rearranging to make sure they're still successful strategically.
Pat Forty, Sports Illustrated, joining us right now. You can follow him on Twitter at @byPat40. All right, when you saw this news, the whole Odell Beckham Jr., and it was giving money to players and whatnot, what was your reaction to that?
I thought it was pretty much hilarious. It was. I said it was like an SEC cartoon come to life because, I think we've all heard a million stories about the $100 handshakes in the SEC. Well, here they are right in front of the TV cameras on the field right after the game. So that was pretty funny. But, there are some repercussions to this. It's not the most serious thing in the world, but there still are NCAA rules saying you can't do that. And I did get a pretty big kick out of LSU immediately coming out the next morning saying that was fake money. That was fake money. Sure, it was fake money. I mean, they threw that out there so fast, I don't think they thought nobody was going to check on it. Then Joe Burrow comes out and basically drops the dime. Says, yeah, it was real money, and I got some. And so now all of a sudden LSU has to backpedal. And basically I think what it'll come down to is they will have to ask the players, how much did you get? Please return the money or give it to a charity. You may be suspended for a game or a quarter or something next year if you were an underclassman. And then we'll have to disassociate one of our best players from the program because he was an attention-seeking fool.
And Pat, really, that's what it was. And it's unfair to even the players. And I don't care if this was a Clemson player, an Ohio State player, a Southern Cal player, whatever it was, is to think of this young man, no matter who it was, hey, you just won a national championship. One of the legends and a guy that you know, an NFL player, comes up while you're doing a TV interview and says, oh, by the way, hey, put this. What was the kid supposed to do? Just throw it back in Odell's face? I mean, again, I think that they'll fix it, but it's just a bad look as that's one of the headlines coming forward. One of the headlines that you have had, Pat, was talking about your never too early top 25 for 2020. You've got Clemson at number 1. That's no doubt, but where do you go after that?
Yeah, I've got Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Alabama 4. I think I have Florida at 8, LSU at 10. That was before the Aranda decision. And then I think I had Texas A&M also in the top 25 as well. So, it's going to be another bang-up year in the SEC. I swung pretty hard on Georgia being able to reload in a lot of areas just because I think they have recruited extremely well, and I do think Jamie Newman's a really good quarterback who could have some immediate benefits there. But Alabama loses a bunch, but that's life. That's what they do every year. They were young on defense, so they're bringing back a lot of people there. I think Florida's going to be very good, and then as we know, LSU's looking at a major rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's how much can they rebuild, and for LSU, you're trying to take it to what Alabama has done, which is stay in contention for titles, even though you're having a bunch of success. You had Auburn coming in at 14, and you do eventually end up having Texas A&M over in the top 25. With that being said, how big of a year is that for Jimbo Fisher, year 3, and no longer this murderer's row of Clemson and Georgia on the schedule?
Right. Yeah. Schedule gives them a little bit more of a break. And year 3 he's getting paid, it's a big 10-year, $75 million contract. I think it's time to start earning it. As we saw this year, I mean, patience is at an all-time low, especially in the SEC. But, I mean, as quickly as Willie Taggart was fired at Florida State, Chad Morris, Matt Luke, Joe Moorhead, man, people want results now, and that was an awfully big contract for Jimbo Fisher, and the results for the first 2 years have been very modest. So I would say, he's another guy who's recruited really well, so they should be able to make a step up, especially as noted, the schedule is not as difficult. So we'll see what they can deliver.
Pat, right now, I got 2 more questions for you, but the first one, what's the most overrated program right now in college football? Is there a program here specifically in this SEC that you look at and go, people are just living off their brand? From the outside looking in, you got to have one, right?
Yeah, I mean I think Texas A&M is that program. That they have been really overrated going into the year. I thought the last couple of years, they had a little bit of a blip with Johnny Manziel, but other than that, have not been a serious player in the SEC West. It's a brutally hard division, but they're just another team in it to this point, and they've got every facility known to man. They've got the biggest budget in America. They've paid as much as anybody ever had for a coach at the time when they brought in Fisher. So, there's a lot of bells and whistles there. There just hasn't been a lot of delivery on the field.
Last question for you, Pat. You talk about the SEC West. We got, media days. I cannot wait. I hope you've already booked your flight. I'm pitching it that it's going to be SEC Media Nights because it should be a primetime event. Which one of these coaches are you buying more stock in to have success by 2023? Mike Leach over at Mississippi State or Lane Kiffin in Oxford?
I'd say Leach. And if you've given that long a window, like, people are saying, they're going to win 8, 9, 10 games next year. Well, they are turning over stylistically in a drastic way. So, you're asking basically a run-based spread scheme team to go to, an offense where they want to throw it 70% of the time, maybe 75% of the time. That's not going to be easy. But you give him a few years, he's going to get a quarterback. He's going to get receivers. His style will be different than everybody else's, so it'll be hard to prepare for. And I think Leach has a chance to win 8-9 games semi-regularly in that division, which is, I think, a lot to ask when you're in the SEC West.
I was going to say, he's one of the best in the business. Sports Illustrated's Pat 40. You can follow him on Twitter at by Pat 40, and really good on his swimming and diving info as well, too. Later, Pat.
I know you'll have me on before the SEC swimming.
Hey, absolutely, man. You'll dial in for us. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Pat 40 joining us right now. Let's get one quick phone call in here. Tupelo, Mississippi. Joseph, thanks for joining Peter Burns in on the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up?
What's going on, Peter?
What's happening, man?
Man, not too much. Good afternoon. Anyway, I totally disagree with Pat 40 right there about, I want to ask your opinion, but I think that Lane Kiffin's he's younger. He's going to stay at Ole Miss longer, and I think that Patricia Oster is a way better place to start for anyway, so we're going to have better players and more chances and more opportunities, man. I'm sure you've been Oxford. I know how it is over there. So, but what do you think? And also, what is your opinion on, should we start Matt Corral next year and let John Rice Plumlee be like a Christian McCaffrey, like we did at Stanford? I don't know. I'm asking that question, and also I want to ask you this. What the hell is wrong with our basketball team?
Thank you for the phone call.
It's ridiculous.
Well, again, the problem is you need Devontae Shuler to start kind of picking it up. So same thing with KJ Buffin. And that was a good first season for Kermit Davis, and you're hiring Kermit Davis for the long term, and I think he's still trying to figure out his roster. But let's go back into the college football questions you have about whether or not it's going to be Leach or Lane Kiffin having more success. I think Lane clearly has more success early, and it's because of Plumlee and Matt Corral. The problem is I don't know if you can keep both of those guys on the roster at the same time. I believe one of them will eventually end up in the transfer portal because, heck, I think both of them are good to go. So it's really going to be probably the most intriguing matchup and quarterback race when it comes down to spring football. And I don't know what Leach's staff is going to look like yet. So I think it's too early to say because it looks like Bob Shoop's going to be leaving and headed up to Michigan. If that's the case, who is going to be your DC down in Starkville? Right now, I do like what Lane is bringing down to Ole Miss as far as his staffs. I lean towards Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss having more success than Leach. I just know we all win come SEC Media Days. More of your phone calls coming up and your tweets as well. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. All right, welcome back to the Paul Finebaum Show. Pat 40 just stopped by. He gave us this way too early top 25. Not a shock. Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama coming in the top 4. Penn State, Oregon, there's no shock there. Oklahoma, great. So we can see them fail once again on a national level. Is there anything more overrated than Oklahoma football right now, even the Big 12? It's a dumpster fire. That's the only one I look at right now, is that it's living on brand recognition instead of every time it shows up. Lately, it feels like the new, I was going to say new Notre Dame, but Kubiak, I caught myself. I didn't say it. No, they are. They're the new Notre Dame. No, the new Notre Dame. I don't know. Cincinnati's kind of interesting, being that high up on at number 12. I think is kind of intriguing to me. North Carolina being in the top 20. Was there anything here, gentlemen, when you started looking at that top 25 that really stood out to you as far as, I didn't think I'd see that happening?
How can you have Memphis ahead of Arizona State? Come on.
Jeez.
What are we doing? What are we talking about here?
Honestly, I'll look at USC. I know they have some talent at quarterback, and they have 3 of them, and they all play like 3 games, whatever, and they got some talent at wide receiver.
Talking about Helinski?
No.
USC?
Southern Cal.
Thank you.
But Oregon at 6. I know Chris Bell's building a program out there, but they're losing a lot.
Yeah, no Justin. I keep on calling it A-Bear, but it's Justin Herbert, who's going to be.
Louisiana.
But another big recruiting class for him. And again, the question on some of those, like the Pac-12, is who else is pushing you right now? And now that really Southern Cal is really going to be the only other team that's going to make a run, I would think, in the Pac-12. Utah could have been that team, but they're losing legitimately like 75% of their starting 22 over to the NFL.
You're not buying Chip Kelly?
No. Again, I think what Chip had done worked in its vacuum back in the day with Oregon. I don't think it works in today's college football landscape, especially in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
I'm actually shocked. I disagree with Pat Forty, and I keep wanting to buy more and more stock with Jimbo Fisher's team. I think that this was a team that really did exactly what we thought it was going to do, Brams and Coobs. They won every game they were supposed to. They lost every game that they were supposed to, and they did it playing like 95% young players, and 95% of those players are going to be back, and the schedule gets a whole lot easier. That's a top 15 team in my mind.
I think so. I'm a little worried maybe we're all getting kind of falling into the trap like we did with Michigan this past offseason. We all fell into this delusion that Harbaugh's just going to do it somehow, and we might be thinking that about Jimbo also, but I like A&M overall.
Maybe they're Georgia West.
Yeah, as far as a lunch. You know what's so funny is I don't know why my first thought was that that's a bad thing, but then again, Georgia's playing for national titles as well, too. Maybe it's a great thing. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum in a news day that has been nothing short of crazy. I mean, these are the dreams that we have as a sports radio show host is like, all right, is it going to be dead? What are you going to talk about? Well, Dave Aranda is leaving to take the Baylor head coaching job. 7 different LSU players have declared for early entries into the NFL draft. You had the news earlier this week, Najee Harris is coming back to Alabama. You had Alabama beating Auburn in a great game and giving the Auburn Hoops team their first loss of the season. And then South Carolina hit a buzzer beater to end up beating Big Blue Nation in Kentucky down in Columbia. So it's a heck of a day to be hosting this show. Let's take more of your phone calls. Greg in Athens, what's up, buddy? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year, Peter. Thank you for taking my call. You forgot one thing there on your lead-in, and that was a Texas caller who was concerned about our topics of discussion today.
Okay, which was? Yeah.
You know, that he said he wasn't an LSU fan, but he didn't want to hear about basketball right now. And, yeah, so he ought to call his station, but wait, they don't have one.
That is true.
In the Big 12. Right, so he just better buckle up because it's a long year. Anyways, the things that are going on with Louisiana are just the price of victory. You know, anytime you have that much success, as exciting as it is, it always comes at a cost. And, you know, Alabama fans have experienced it quite often, as have some other schools. But with Aranda going, that's a biggie. You know, Burrow's gone, and, of course, Brady. The thing that matters is when you put the replacements in, what is the chemistry going to be like? Because that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they've got the playbook, but you don't have the same chemistry that you had this year. So it's going to be really important to make sure that they can gel those replacements in. And I think on the football side or the player side, other than, you know, Burrow leaving, those inside linebackers leaving are going to be critical because that's the heart of your defense. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Orgeron does with that team during the offseason and what they do moving forward. But they should, you know, LSU fans should not be worried about those things. They should be celebrating the fact that they have won a championship this decade and relish it because, as we know, success can be fleeting. So I hope that they will do so, and I was glad to see Alabama win last night. I didn't expect them to, but I had a cousin that went down to that game, and he said it was packed and it was electric. And, you know, when you were down, you didn't get to go to the LSU-Alabama game, but that was electric when we were down there, and that always makes a difference in ball games, win or lose, is that excitement.
Well, and I think –
thanks for taking –
Yeah, Greg, thank you for the phone call, man. I appreciate it. And a couple different things to respond to. That's what I love about SEC basketball, and that's why these hires have been great, because if you watched Coleman Coliseum, it was packed right, before that game. And I think that played into it. You look at Colonial Life Arena in Columbia. That place had its 16th sellout yesterday, and that made a difference why Frank Martin's squad was able to beat Kentucky. So I think the fact that you're starting to see more people care about hoops is huge for this conference, because then recruits look at it and go, you know what, I was thinking about going to the ACC school. I don't know. You know, the reason why kids took those ACC opportunities or even Big 12 opportunities, because they would show up on recruiting trips, and in Kansas, they were packed. In Raleigh-Durham area, they were packed, right? And you'd go out and you look at, all right, there's a pretty good crowd at SEC. No. There's no reason why SEC hoops shouldn't have rabid fans, and I love to see that, and it made a difference over on Wednesday night. But one of the reasons why, Greg, you got the hotline is because you made a very astute point about the middle linebackers for LSU. And Patrick Queen is gone, and Jacob Phillips is gone as well, too. What did we figure out was the Achilles heel of Alabama's defense last year? It was not necessarily coordinators. It was not having linebackers and that communication. And with Queen and Phillips no longer being a part of LSU squad, I would say, believe it or not, that hurts just as much as losing Dave Aranda over to the next level. Jimbo is in Arkansas. Real quick, Jimbo, what do you got, man?
Hey, Brother Burns. Congratulations there on your success.
Thank you, sir.
LSU Tigers, too. Hey, your boys are headed up to the White House?
That's correct. The LSU football team is in or out to the White House as we speak.
Hey, man, are they going to do better than last year with Clemson and bring out Burger King and Wendy's sandwiches? Because this is the SEC, man. We expect more.
I will be interested to see that, because that's kind of Trump's deal. Is Trump's like, hey, man, you eat healthy all year long. Let's get you a bunch of Big Macs and and chicken nuggets and whatnot. You know what? I would imagine that probably talks to Trump and says, let's get you some boudin, some jambalaya. Like, we need to bring that culture over to the White House. That's all I'm asking for, Jimbo, right?
Yeah, I can understand why they brought out Burger King to Clemson. If it had been me, I'd have brought out bologna on white bread with a little Duke's mayonnaise.
Jimbo, they're going to have some fun, man. Again, we'll talk about LSU because, hey, listen, is that going to be the last trip to the White House they have in a long time? Dave Aranda's gone. Joe Brady's gone. As many as 9 different players are leaving. We're going to talk about that coming up more with T-Bob Hebert, who's going to be joining us on the Paul.
And welcome to Tuesday. We are back in studio, and we're glad that you are with us. And what a night in New Orleans. And we're going to have all the coverage for you and get your reaction today. Joe Burrow, his hands raised, and the national championship living in Louisiana. That was the front page of the Times-Picayune. Joe Burrow puffing on the stogie. I'm sure there's an NCAA violation there, and who cares? It was an eventful couple of days in the Big Easy, and last night was an all-timer.
Well, Paul, I guess we beat little old Clemson, didn't we?
Yes, you did.
While we're here, as we start this show, you were in New Orleans yesterday, right?
It seems like I was, now that I remember.
Mark Kubiak was in New Orleans yesterday, right?
Cubes was in New Orleans, yes.
So you're back
today.
Where's Coops?
He's got a better deal than I do, obviously.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Thank God for the transfer portal.
You're right.
Couldn't believe that just 2 years ago, here LSU was losing at home to Troy, and now here they are completing maybe the best season in college football history.
I'm a truck driver, so I was in my truck watching the game, and when Joe Burrow threw the touchdown pass to go up 21-17, I started screaming and jumping in my truck. And
hey, by the way, were you driving at the time?
No, I was at a truck stop.
Oh, okay, good. Just got my feet propped up and laid back, listening to the callers mostly celebrate.
You are the king. Well, you had a shorter night than Orgeron did. He said he at least got up at 7:30.
Yeah,
probably went to bed at about the same time.
Yeah, but he did have Popeye's chicken, and I did not.
Yeah.
So I think he won. I think he won the evening. I was at some place, some delicatessen in New York this year, and the guy brought me a buttered toasted bialy, and I didn't want to eat anything else.
I think, from an individual standpoint, I think you could put what Joe Burrow did this year maybe second all time behind Barry Sanders in terms of single season performances. I think it was that good.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back into another hour of the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, who gets a couple of well-deserved days off as he has worked, I think, 361 days in a row. So rest well, Mr. Finebaum. You can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Joining us right now, T-Bob Hebert from 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge. My goodness, we're talking about, there's been like 17 different things that have broken for LSU within the last 72 hours. One was all the records of winning the national championship game, T-Bob, but now news coming out, Dave Aranda taking the Baylor head coaching job, no longer going to be the DC. What does that do to this Tiger squad?
Well, look, it's a loss. There's no, I mean, let's be painfully clear about that, right? You can't lose a coach of Dave Aranda's caliber and think that, oh, it's all good. You'll be good. It's not a big deal. No, he is one of the most respected minds in all of college football, really in all of football, especially defensively, right? Like, it's one of the reasons why the national championship was so intriguing is you had these two powerhouse offenses going against these great defenses, specifically these defensive coaches, right? Venables versus Aranda. It was crazy, but here is the thing. This comes, all these departures you're seeing, the juniors, the coaches, everybody, this is the sign of a successful program. These departures come part and parcel with championships, right? Like, if you want to, that is the goal. You want to hire people that are talented enough that somebody else will want to hire them away. And, like, maybe you just luck into a situation like Venables at Clemson where he's comfortable or he's biding his time, or like a Kirby Smart who really waited on the Georgia game for a while, and maybe you get a real good extended run. I mean, this is actually the first time that Dave Aranda had ever been anywhere 4 years straight in his entire career. So you actually got a lot out of Dave compared to a lot of the other upgrades and jumps that he had made previously. So, yeah, man, it's rough, and it's going to be really tough to replace a coach of Joe Brady's caliber. It's going to be really tough to replace a coach of Dave Aranda's caliber. But like I said, this is a byproduct of winning championships. And what's fascinating now is, against all odds, Ed Orgeron has shown you that he can build a national champion. He can build a powerhouse. He can get there. Now, the question is, can you stay there? And ultimately, that is what separates the all-timers from some other guys. I tend to think that he will, but only time will tell.
T-Bob Hebert, ESPN Radio 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge, joining us right now. Which one, and you can only pick one, T-Bob, hurts the worst?
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, him leaving, Joe Brady, him leaving to go to the Panthers, or Dave Aranda going to Waco?
I mean, for me, that's easy. I think it's Burrow. What you just witnessed out of Joe Burrow was, I mean, it was ludicrous. It was borderline insanity. Not even the most gluttonous of LSU fans' dreams would have ever expected to see 60 touchdowns, 65 responsible for, 76 completion percentage, like 5,600 yards. Like, think about this. Miles Brennan could throw 40 touchdowns next year, and that would still be 20 less than what you just witnessed out of Joe Burrow. Like, let's be painfully clear. Coaches they have a massive impact, and having a great coach, as you see on the college football level, maybe even especially, having a great coach is tantamount to success. But ultimately, football is a game that goes the way of your quarterback. Mm-hmm. And LSU just had Captain America at quarterback, right? That was my analogy. I couldn't escape all year long. Joe Burrow played this season like a Marvel superhero. Like, it didn't matter. When you go to a Marvel movie, you know the superhero, the hero's going to win in the end. It doesn't matter how dark things look, how threatened the world looks, anything like that. The superhero always comes through in the end. That was Joe Burrow this season for these LSU Tigers. So absolutely, that is the biggest loss.
I like the fact that we're talking about this, not necessarily Dave Aranda leaving, but eventually it was going to happen. Listen, whenever his name came up in the UNLV search, he was never really going to go to UNLV, but I felt like that was his agent putting the smoke signal out there going, hey, just so you know, like, Dave's entertaining offers, hit your boy up. And sure enough, it was even Hawaii was looked at, and of course now he's headed out to Baylor, which makes sense because Matt Rule is a defensive-minded coach, pretty good roster, he goes. I'm glad we're talking about this and not because of the other headline, which is the Odell Beckham Jr. Whole deal and him just acting that way. I'll ask this simple. What the hell was Odell thinking over on Monday night?
I mean, I think probably not thinking is closer to the mark. And look, I understand this isn't necessarily a super one-sided conversation. I think there have been some very impressive, nuanced arguments and like, I mean, I think I saw Dominic Fox sort of get up today talking about he almost viewed it as an act of like civil disobedience, because a lot of us disagree with the fact that these players can't be paid, right? I mean, you saw the spectacle of Monday night. You saw all of that. And for this cash to be raising this big of a stink, it is a sign that something's a bit off kilter. That said, the rules are what they are right now, and you know what the rules are. And if you're Odell, you kind of interjected yourself into all of this when you didn't need to. It wasn't your moment. And that's maybe where I get frustrated. Is like this was real easy to avoid. And if your goal was really to hook these guys up because they can't get hooked up, well, like you could have gone about you can't trace cash. Like you could have gone about that at the bar afterwards or somewhere else. So to me, it just felt like a bit of a publicity stunt and kind of like a look at me deal. And it was just the wrong time to do that, in my opinion. Like there was no need for any of this drama. And the other part, Peter, is none of this is going to amount to anything. Right?
Correct.
Like this is all much ado about nothing. It's just much ado that didn't need to happen in the first place. And I think that's where it gets frustrating. And then I've seen some different arguments around this, but like him like talking while Ogeron was giving a speech after the locker room, it just felt very like, look, man, enjoy being there, enjoy the moment, absolutely be happy. I was on that field after the game; it was spectacular. But don't do it at the cost. Like don't interject yourself into the moment. Let the 2019-2020 LSU Tigers enjoy what they just accomplished, which is, I think, objectively the best resume, the best season of all time when you look relative to their peers what this LSU team did.
T-Bob, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like LSU won the national championship not in New Orleans. They won it in Tuscaloosa. Once they had that first half, they won that game. There was a certain sense of relief with this team that culminated in what I think was just a 4-hour celebration in New Orleans as opposed to a national championship game against Clemson. Is that it was a foregone conclusion, and that's why I rode the LSU so hard all season long, because I could just see this team. With that being said, what is the relationship with LSU fans and Alabama fans, and what should it be now, knowing that it's LSU that's a national champion and they're the last ones to beat Alabama?
I mean, I can only speak. So a lot of my best friends in high school all ended up at Alabama. Now, this is back in 2007. This is before the rise of Saban. So it was actually the easiest SEC school to get into. And they weren't the smartest, so they ended up kind of falling into Alabama. And I will say this. Finally, Peter, it's been a long time. It has been a long time before I could talk crap in my group text and actually have a leg to stand on. And talking trash to Alabama fans and seeing them get defensive and seeing them have to eat it and seeing them have to try to talk me about Aranda leaving and all this, it's just, it is a sweet nectar that I have not tasted in far too long. So, no, I hate Alabama, and I love the fact that I get to rub this season in this face, and I can say, well, I mean, this is better than any season y'all ever had. Sure, like, y'all have done impressive things, but, like, you never beat 7 top 10 teams. You never beat the preseason top 4, etc. You didn't score more points than anybody else in history. So make no mistake, the victory lap is in full effect. And that's what else I would say to LSU fans. Like, come on now, y'all. This was the most fun year ever because this was the no expectation year. What really decides how happy you are as a fan is not the results themselves. It's where do those results land in relation to the expectations. And this year, like we said, went beyond anybody's wildest dreams. So enjoy this championship. Talk trash, strut, have fun. And look, the future, you worry about those bridges when you get to them. Like the future it'll take care of itself. Yeah, it's going to be tough. You got to replace coaching talent. You got to replace playing talent. But as we said, that's the nature of the beast, right? Like if you want to be at this elite level, if you want to win at this elite level, that is a byproduct of it. So, yeah, I am in full enjoyment mode. National champs. The curse of the Superdome is lifted. The demons are exorcised. 2012 is finally out the window. And now we sit here in a new era of college football. Think about the potential of LSU here. There are 6 current active coaches that have won national championships. 3 of those coaches won them at LSU. 3 different coaches, 3 consecutive coaches to take home a national title. What that speaks to is an inherent kind of power in the state. And I think it's because, yes, you produce great athletes. There's no major in-school rival. And so you're never that far away from being really good once again. You just have to be able to recruit well. And if there's one thing that Ed O is great at, it is recruiting.
There's no doubt about it. And now he can pick up a phone call and say, you know who I met with yesterday? I met with the president. By the way, we were national champion, and I want you to come play football for the LSU Tigers. So, hey, T-Bob, enjoy your what appears to be probably at least a 300-day victory lap there in Baton Rouge. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Yeah, how long till the season starts again?
Not soon enough. We'll put it that way. I'm ready for it right now. See you, bud.
All right, Peter, have a good one, man.
There it is, T-Bob Hebert joining us here on the Paul Finebaum Show. All right, I'm done with interviews. We're done with the guests today. It is all you the rest of this show. Hit us up on Twitter, @PeterBurnsESPN. We got Boogie, Johnny, Donovan, Lee, Steven, Joe, Bama, Nick, everybody.
Our judgment expert, Ken Smithmeyer, joining us. Ken, great to have you on. Hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. So we want to, before we get to a couple of other specific places, I want to ask you about this LSU season, and was it easy to predict, especially looking at Orgeron, who a lot of people disrespected and didn't think would ever be successful, and the coexistence of Joe Brady and Steve Ensminger?
You know, nobody predicted this. I think Ed Orgeron is one of the greatest examples that you'll ever find in any area of business, whether it's sports or regular business, of a guy who genuinely self-evaluated and said, what have I done poorly in the past that I need to improve? What am I good at that I should focus on? And he changed himself, right? When you go back to his days at Ole Miss and then look at what he is today, it's kind of amazing, and you couldn't have predicted that.
Before you go, quick question, because we're short on time, but my observation, and you're the expert, it almost seemed like Nick Saban was one of the bigger winners Monday night. Dabo lost, which meant that we couldn't declare Dabo as the king of college football. He was on TV, he looked good, and because LSU was so great, losing to them almost doesn't seem as bad as it did in early November.
I agree 100%, Paul. All the talk about the decline of Saban and the empire in Tuscaloosa, I think Monday night everything got rebalanced in Nick Saban's favor.
Exactly the way it's supposed to be, right?
the world according to Nick.
Exactly.
Right?
Don't rule him out yet. Ken, always great to have you on.
I wouldn't. Nope.
As someone who has studied him and has been tempted a couple of times, I walked out of the Superdome thinking Nick Saban has had a pretty good night.
Well, look, Paul, it was this time last year that we were deifying the trio of Trevor Lawrence, Brent Venables, and Dabo Swinney, right?
Yeah.
And Saban was over the hill. Tua couldn't win the big one, and the revolving door of D-line and D-coordinator coaches at Alabama finally caught up to him. Well, what are we doing this year? Should we now deify that Swinney can't coach and Venables has been exposed and Trevor Lawrence is just average? Well, none of those are true.
Ken, my final thought, even though I was there, I'm still not convinced that Brent Venables was there on Monday night. But anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. Ken, great to have you on, as always.
Thank you. See you.
Welcome back, Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter @PeterBurnsESPN. You can always give us a phone call, 855-242-PAUL. That's 855-242-7285. And let's go to Boogie. Boogie's in Alabama. What's up, Boogie?
Yes, hey, Peter, this is Bayou Boogie over here in Alabama. Redemption was a long time coming, but it came packaged in a perfect bowl. And, boy, I tell you, having been here for quite some time and listened to all these Alabama fans, and now I got an opportunity to celebrate with perfection, that was great. But I do want to say this, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions, and then I'll hang up and listen to you. This is for all the media and everyone that's giving the hype of who we're losing. We're not driving down the interstate with no brakes. We have brakes. Let's just pump the brakes. We still have some great guys that are coming back, such as Logan and Pharrell, and we also have Stingley and others that are coming in. So we have a good nucleus. So I don't believe we should be panicking right now. But here's what I want to ask you, Peter. I want to ask you this. Do you think that with the departure of Brady and the departure of, soon to be Aranda, and, of course, Joe Burrow leaving, do you think, with those coordinators leaving, do you think that has an impact on recruiting, one? And then also, do you believe that Coach O has developed a culture now to where, because the culture is set in place, we can just plug people in and they'll be flocking to come to LSU, coordinators that is, coaches that is, and even players, because they know what's been established there, because it's not like Coach O came overnight. And then three, do you think that Miles Brennan, has been stewing, and even though although he had to wait his time,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that Brennan has something to prove and there's a chip on his shoulder?
Well, and Boogie, there's a lot to unpack in that call. And let's start backwards here with Miles Brennan. I think Miles Brennan showed up to Baton Rouge, and he loved the fact that he was a quarterback for the LSU Fighting Tigers. And again, if I'm an 18, 19-year-old kid and I show up ballyhooed and I'm going to be the savior of LSU quarterback, I'd be spending a whole lot in bogeys and nights in Freds as well, too, living the dream of an SEC quarterback. I think the one important thing, Boogie, is that the fact that he got to see the laser-like intense focus, this Peyton Manning type focus of pursuit of excellence that Joe Burrow had. And I hope for LSU's sake that Brennan says, all right, I've had my fun. It's be a whole lot more fun to win the Heisman as well, too. So I think that he has seen the success that Burrow has, and that success. And the last thing you said is talking about culture, and that's something you can't replicate, right? I mean, everyone wants to have this culture. Dabo has this culture at Clemson, and it works really damn well. And guess what? That's what Ed Ogeron is creating right now. The X's and O's, those are replaceable. Joe Brady, believe it or not, is replaceable for LSU football. Dave Aranda is replaceable in the X's and O's. Those guys are coaches. The X's and O's and the strategy can be replaced. What cannot be replaced is Ed Ogeron, what he has built. And they have built this success in this egoless vacuum in the fact that, oh, by the way, everyone loved LSU football. I even had my wife, who hates LSU football, diehard Alabama Crimson Tide fan. She was wearing an LSU T-shirt to the national championship game, all right? That doesn't happen if you're an unlikable team. As long as Ed Ogeron is there, he was able to recruit at the time that he was over at Southern Cal, and he was at time that he's able to recruit at LSU. And they have shown right now that it ain't about him, it's about this football program. And as long as you have culture, people are going to buy into it. And coaches right now, LSU doesn't have to go beg coaches to come coach for them. They can select. And that's a difference, because that's what's made Nick Saban so great over the last couple of years is he didn't have to recruit players. He said, I want you, and he selected. And now that's what Ed Ogeron can do because of the culture that he has down in Baton Rouge, and that's why it fits so perfectly. Boogie, thanks for the phone call, my man. I appreciate it. Let's continue to move on. Donovan is in Kentucky. What's up, Donovan?
Hey, how's it going, Peter?
What's up, Donovan? How you doing, bud?
Man, I'm a lifelong LSU fan, and it's been a long time coming, and it feels really good. But I do hear a lot of whining coming from the Alabama fans in the crowd. This guy that got on there earlier talking about how we're going to go 8-4 and all that. Listen, we got a lot of great players coming back. Okay, we got Jamar Chase, Terrence Marshall Jr. I think sitting behind Joe Burrow for a couple of years, Miles Brennan, he's going to step up. I think he's got that experience, like you said. He got to see it firsthand, greatness, and he's got the talent. He's got the receivers too. We got a lot of good, great young running backs. I know we lost a lot on the O-line, but Coach O's refilling those gaps. Defense, we can clearly see our defense wasn't great all year, but we had a great offense, and that carried us throughout most of the year. I'm in the same boat as you. I have a wife that's a big-time Alabama fan as well, and she was cheering for the Tigers, needless to say. It's just a fun year overall.
And Donovan, here's the deal. It's great for LSU to be good for this conference. And what I mean by that is I can't stand going to other places and go, oh, yeah, you always chant SEC. Well, guess what? It's just Alabama. And truthfully, for a long time, they were right. I could say that Alabama was the one who held the torch. It was Florida for a while, and then, of course, the SEC West started making this run in this last decade. But it is good for Alabama every once in a while to have these seasons again. You know what? Guess what? They came into your place. They embarrassed you in the first half. What are you going to do about it? And guess what? Everybody claiming the Alabama dynasty is done. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And if anything, all it's done is poured kerosene and add a little bit of fuel to that fire, because I guarantee you they are fired up about it. So, again,
and
you like to have that competition.
They got Nick Saban.
And here's the deal. And Donovan, thank you for the phone call. The thing is with Saban looks at what's happening at LSU right now, and he laughs, and he goes, well, that happens to us every year. And every year we're pretty much in the college football playoff. So what are you going to do, Coach O? And that's the biggest question mark down in Baton Rouge. Was this a one-and-done type thing? Or is this the new future of football down in Baton Rouge? Only time's going to tell. Your phone call is coming up next, 855-242-PAUL. Hit me up on Twitter as well, at Peter Burns, ESPN. Welcome back to Paul Finebaum Show. This was not a mistake. Literally, earlier before today, I asked, all right, who are the top 5 returning quarterbacks in the SEC? Honestly, it was a conversation we were having in the Paul Finebaum newsroom. And I'm like, I went 15 minutes on it, and I'm like, no, you can have places, but this, you know what? And that's not what you're supposed to do in sports talk radio, right? In sports talk radio, whether you're right or wrong, you have an opinion, right? Have an opinion, don't suck. That's what Jim Rome always used to say. It's like, go one way. And it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, just go one way hard. I couldn't do that. It would be me lying to you if I told you exactly who I thought were the top 5 quarterbacks in this conference. Brams, Kubiak, we've had a bunch of tweets. Where are we at right here? We got a lot of people saying like
Here's
Josh, Trask, Mon, Nix, Mac Jones, Helinski.
I feel like this
Can
is
you
the
put
list.
Mac Jones on there?
This is the list we came up with when we talked about this an hour ago. Josh, you're just copying our list, bro.
No, I mean, there's...
Interesting. No Miles Brennan out of LSU. No Terry Wilson, who should be 100% for the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah.
You got Bo Nix coming in at number 3. Interesting. No Jamie Newman is on that list.
Newman's good. I know a lot of people, didn't watch a ton of ACC football this year.
Why would you watch ACC football?
Wake Forest ACC football.
There's reasons. There's
Really? Were there really reasons to watch ACC football?
There isn't.
The ACC football was a dumpster fire inside of an actual dumpster fire.
You didn't watch Wake Forest, NC State?
And here's a dumpster fire inside of it. That was ACC football.
If I was texting you, I would spell reasons with a $sign in place of the S. Can we just leave it at that?
That'd be fair.
Do you think that's going to impact Newman here? He's playing at Wake Forest, which, it draws a respectable 18,000 a game. But playing in front of Georgia and Alabama in week 3,
I don't think the idea. I don't think, because I think great players, and I think Newman can be a great player. I don't think the bright lights will phase him of the SEC. My question is, does Georgia have the pieces around him to make him be great? And especially the offensive coordinator. Is James Coley going to be the guy that can finally get the pieces together for Jamie Newman to have a lot of success? That's the big question mark. Welcome, everybody, back into the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. Hit me up on Twitter, at Peter Burns ESPN. I promised to take a bunch of phone calls, so let's do it. Bama Nick, what's happening, my man? Happy New Year. Long time.
I know, Peter Burns. Happy New Year to you and your family. How's that young baby of yours doing?
He's doing great, man. Little Thomas James Burns is he's an LSU fan, and he's undefeated as a child on this earth. He's never seen the LSU Tigers lose a game, so he's living his best life right now.
Outstanding, Peter. Outstanding. Look, Peter, let's talk some Bama quarterback situations over there. We got Bryce Young coming in from California, right? Number 1 recruited quarterback in the country. You know that. All right. Talia, you know, with Tua going pro and Talia, you think he's going to leave or transfer? I know Mac Jones is going to be the number 1 quarterback next year. Ain't no doubt about that. Now, what do you see on that situation?
Well, I think honestly, and like a lot of different things in the SEC next year, it's a wait and see deal. And I think it always comes down to, and believe it or not, I think the quarterback position and how that room plays out has something to do with where Tua gets drafted. And so it would not shock me whatsoever, and I don't know this to be a case, but I'm just ripping here, Bam and Nick, is to think that if Tua ended up getting drafted by, let's say, the Dolphins, that Talia ends up, his brother ends up transferring somewhere closer to him. Or if he goes out west, like San Diego, he goes out there on the West Coast as well, because that's a big family unit, or the Tagovailoas. But ultimately, when it comes down to, I think it's Mac Jones becoming the starter and Bryce Young being able to play as many as 4 games, and they figure it out from there.
All right, that's what I was thinking. I think Talia will go wherever his brother goes, whatever pro team it is. He's going to transfer. What about Paul Tyson? You know, I mean, he's up and coming, I think. I mean, I guess he has to wait his turn like the process is. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Bam, what you got to do is I think all of these kids now understanding the transfer portal and the process, they're going to give themselves an opportunity to win a starting job. It's not until, and that's why coaches a lot of time won't say who the starter is, because they don't want a kid transferring out. So I think that those races in that quarterback position in competition will go on not only for Alabama, but a lot of these schools now.
What do you say about our running backs? Najee's coming back. What do you say in that situation?
I mean, listen, here's the deal. There is death taxes in Alabama having running backs, right? I mean, that's and when Najee said that he was coming back, that was huge news for Alabama. But again, as much as it's important for Najee to come back, I'm not worried about running backs for Alabama. The question that I had was, once the big news was when Dylan Moses said he was coming back. I'd argue that Dylan Moses coming back was as important, if not more important, than Tua coming back to Alabama, because you needed a communicator on the middle of that field and a leader, and I don't think Alabama had that. And had things got flipped, had they had Dylan Moses, a healthy Dylan Moses on the field against LSU, maybe that game changes, and sure enough, we'd be talking about Alabama playing in the college football playoff.
Absolutely right there, Peter Burns. That's why you the man when Finebaum ain't in. But, of course, Finebaum don't take my calls no more, but that's why I called you.
Hey, I appreciate it, Bama Nick. And like I said, Finebaum is the GOAT, so it's just an honor to be sitting here for a couple of hours and hanging out with y'all. All right, Lee from Seattle, what's up? Happy New Year. Lee, talk to me. What's going on? Lee, unbelievable. So here's the deal with Lee, right? Lee had an opportunity. He stayed on hold for like an hour and a half and fell asleep. Lee didn't get that opportunity. All right, we go to Atlanta. Johnny, what's happening, Johnny?
Peter, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. First of all, congratulate to LSU for winning the national championship. It's great to see the SEC continue their dominance. I got to tell you, though, Peter, all this talk about LSU and Alabama, and then you made a statement earlier that, quite honest with you, Peter, I'm riding around in a 2-lane road in South Georgia. I almost ran off the road in the woods when you made the prediction you made about the Florida Gators for next year.
Yes, sir, I did.
Peter. Oh, my goodness. So, did you see Florida in the Orange Bowl against Virginia?
I did see Florida in the Orange Bowl against Virginia. They did win that game, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
They did. How many losses did Virginia have? You remember?
I don't really care about ACC football when it comes to the regular season,
well,
Johnny. So
I think they had 5 losses in the ACC. ACC. So I'm saying all this, Peter, to say this: to say Florida is going to contend for the East next year, I don't disagree with you one bit. I agree 100%. Mullen's done a great job. If you can recruit and start from Mississippi, you can certainly recruit in Gainesville, Florida. Florida is going to contend for the East. But for you to step out there and say, not only do you think they're going to contend for the East, the SEC championship, you went on out there and said they could contend for the national championship?
That's correct.
What in the heck have you been drinking, Peter?
John, you got to realize LSU won a national championship a couple days ago, and I'm a diehard LSU fan. There has been some alcohol consumed in my life over the last 72 hours. I'm not going to lie. But I am sober right now enough to tell you that I do believe. Why would I not believe that in Dan Mullen's squad? Listen, Dan Mullen did not have the team he has coming back into Gainesville that he had. That's a better team in 2020 than what I believe he had down in Starkville, and he had them ranked as the #1 team in the country a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I do believe that Florida is going to be the team to beat in the SEC East next year. And if you're a team to beat in the SEC East, as good as the SEC is overall, that sure as hell makes you an opportunity, give you an opportunity to win a national title.
Well, it does. It does. But, I mean, you've got to look at the dominance Georgia's had over Florida, especially the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dominance, the recruiting, everything swung in Georgia's favor. But Florida has gotten better every year. I agree with you 100%. And again, I'm going to repeat myself. Florida will contend for the East, there's no doubt, but I just don't see you putting Florida on a pedestal that they can even discuss competing for a national championship after barely beating a 5-loss ACC Virginia team in a bowl.
I get it, but guess what? And Johnny, thank you very much. You know what? I heard people say that, and I don't think it'll happen this way. But I did hear people talk about, hey, it was a nice win LSU had against Central Florida last year in the bowl game. Were there a lot of people talking about LSU winning a national championship game last year? Nope. And guess what they just did? They absolutely whooped up on everybody. So I'm telling you, if LSU can do it, why can't other teams? And I will tell you this, Florida's in a better position than LSU was at last year. Now, they just got to get the right pieces together. And, of course, Kyle Trask and Emory Jones might be that guy. One quick phone call in here for break. Rick in SoCal, what's happening, brother?
Thanks for taking my call, Peter. I agree with you. I think Florida, first of all, it's Florida. Okay, you have 5-star athletes all over the field, so why not? Why couldn't they contend? If things go their way, stay away from the injury bug like Alabama had, certainly they could be right there with SEC West. Now, I wouldn't say that I would pick them over in Alabama, but they could certainly challenge for the SEC title. I don't think that's going out on a limb. But let me take your comment one more step further when it comes to Dylan Moses. Alabama's losing a lot, and they do every year. Just like LSU's getting that bug this year. But look what Alabama's got coming back. Alex Leatherwood staying and protect that left side. Now you got Tua leaving, which I think is actually a good thing because now you don't have to worry about him every single time he gets tackled. He's a bag of potato chips. I mean, so he's going to be in and out, in and out, in and out of the lineup. I want somebody that's in there steady. And you got Alex Leatherwood protecting him. You got McMillan and Moses coming back. You got half of the offensive line coming back and every running back coming back.
Mm-hmm.
You lose Ruggs and Judy, and that's huge. But you still got Waddle and Devontae, and then you got Michie and Shavers. I mean, those are two guys that could play with just about any other program in the country. So Alabama's going to be just fine. In fact, with what LSU's losing, I think Alabama's the team again in the SEC. Georgia's going to take a step back. I think A&M's going to be better than they were last year, but I still think Alabama's going to be the team in the West. But Clemson's already there. They've already booked their tickets because they just don't get injured playing in that freaking co-ed softball league they play in, and they've got all that talent coming back. So I think it's going to be the same 4 teams basically that were in there this past year. You can kind of book 6 to 7 teams that are going to be there when it's all said and done. But the one key to Alabama with Moses coming back, not just with his play, leadership.
Yep.
Alabama never wins when they don't have that key guy, a Jonathan Allen. I mean, you got to have that guy that steps in the huddle and gets everybody focused and right. And they haven't had that in 2 years. So I think that's a huge part of Alabama's return is Dylan Moses and McMillan in the middle.
Yep.
They're going to have to find a couple of pass rushers, but I think you can move Harris to the outside. He played it in high school. and he can put pressure on the quarterback. So I think Alabama overall is going to be fine. I'm picking them in the Final Four. I know it's too early, but if they can stay healthy, they'll be right there. And Bryce Young is going to step in just like Jalen Hurts did against SC 3 years ago.
Yep.
He's going to step in against SC next year, and we'll see what happens.
Rick,
Thanks for taking my call.
Always great stuff. The only concerns I have about Alabama is, my goodness, you have no chance to just kind of ease into the season, right? You're going to play Southern Cal to open up. Southern Cal will probably be a top 15 team, and also you're going to face Georgia early in that season as a crossover divisional opponent. But here's the two things real quick before we go that are important. You have all those players that you listed, Rick and SoCal, that are coming back for Alabama, and maybe more importantly, you have a lot of the coaching staff back. That's something we haven't been able to say about the Alabama Crimson Tide in years, and that may be the difference maker in 2020. More of your phone calls coming up next here on the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul.
Tom is with us, Tom Van Haren, to talk about the Penn State situation. Tom, great to have you on. This is a terrible story to talk about, but I was just simply trying to let the audience know that we don't have all the facts, but you know a lot more about it than we do. We say hello to you and ask you to give us a primer on what we know about this right now. Good afternoon.
It's a lawsuit being brought up by Isaiah Humphries, a former player who's now at Cal. His father, Leonard Humphries, played at Penn State, played in the NFL. And the allegations, they've got 8 counts in this lawsuit. And the allegations are that Humphries was a victim of hazing, some sexual in nature, that the coaches, the Penn State football coaches, knew that it was happening. And Humphries alleges that when he told the coaches about the hazing and about the incidents, they didn't do anything to protect him. And ultimately, they made it difficult for him, scrutinized him after he came out with those allegations. The other important fact here, Paul, is that Penn State released a statement of their own yesterday saying that last year, the Office of Sexual Misconduct and the Office of Student Conduct investigated these allegations. The Penn State police investigated related allegations and forwarded their findings onto the district attorney, who ultimately did not press charges at the time. That was all done last year. So that's the statement that Penn State is putting out, that they've already investigated from a couple different angles these allegations, and no charges were pursued at the time.
I think a lot of times we're conditioned to believe that universities are going to cover up. I will point out, though, that this is a university where the president, the athletic director, countless other officials not only lost their jobs, but they were prosecuted. So I'm not making a judgment here because I really don't know anything about it. But this is not a university administration that I think would take any allegations lightly. Do you?
Obviously, they don't want that situation to happen again. And I think that's a good point. That I don't think anybody there is taking this lightly, and I don't think anybody there will try to just sweep it under the rug because of what's happened in the past and what that program has been through. And you mentioned, I think that's the first place that everybody goes to is what happened with Jerry Sandusky. And I think the university has tried to distance themselves as far as they could from that place and from those people and what happened. So it would not behoove them to operate that way.
Well, Tom, thank you. I know this will not be the last time we talk about this or anyone talks to you about it. It's a pretty serious situation. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul.
Welcome back, Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. I will be in today and tomorrow. Mr. Paul taking a good, well-deserved day or two off because I think he worked 300 straight days. Let's get back to your phone calls. Cowboy, you're in Florida. What's going on? Welcome to the Paul Finebaum Show with Peter Burns.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Burns, for taking my call. Can you hear me okay?
I got you loud and clear, Cowboy.
All right, man. The first thing I want to get out front is I'm a diehard Alabama fan. I have a lot of great things to talk to you about LSU as soon as I say a couple things. I slammed I-Man yesterday for making fun of Nick Saban in his jacket. He's just a whiner. He always does that. But and I want to say hello to Greg in Athens. I used to live in Elmont in Athens. I want to let him know that, hey, man, we're neighbors. I'm far away. But, Mr. Burns, I want to congratulate you and the LSU fans on their win. And I think that Coach Ogeron, he deserved everything he got, man. And, I've been watching it all year, and he's a great man. And you've got a great coach, and it's not over. They will be back.
Cowboy, it's interesting you say that, and thank you so much for the phone call. And it's intriguing to me about how if this was Gus winning, Alabama fans would hate it. If it was Kirby winning, Alabama fans would hate it. But there's something about Orgeron. And there's a relationship between LSU and Alabama, right? This has become like the Bloods and Crips of the SEC West over the last, decade it feels like, because both of those teams are it feels like title contenders. And the fact that Ed Orgeron gets phone calls on the Paul Finebaum shows going, we love you, or not love you, but we respect you, shows about the culture that he's brought. Now, the difference is it's great for the win. Can you do what Alabama has done, which is not miss a beat? Alabama, this is the first time they've ever not been in the college football playoff, but they are losing all these players every single year. How does LSU react to losing Joe Brady? How do they react to losing Dave Aranda, to 9 different players going early, including and then Joe Burrow no longer being there? That is a question if you want to become the next Alabama or the next Clemson or the next great dynasty in college football. Let's keep up with your phone calls right now. Derek is in Georgia. What's up, Derek?
Hey, Peter, how you doing? It's just amazing how quick the season has got started. Right now, everybody's undefeated. And I sit and I listen today, and including you, Peter, y'all just bashing my Bulldogs. All I can tell you is you better get ready. A little while ago, you said yourself about Alabama better prepare for the 3rd game of the season.
Yep.
So the Bulldogs, yeah, we lost some players, but that defense, we've got some of them coming back. That defense is going to be as good or better. Quarterback is a question, but we got a good transfer in. We have some good recruits, Carson Beck. You know, we ain't throwing in the towel, man. We just getting going again. And what we remember is our coach's last name is Smart.
No, but Derek, listen, what trash did I talk about Georgia that wasn't true? I haven't said anything other than the fact of I've got questions about their offensive play calling, which, by the way, was a fact. I think James Coley and Jake Fromm were not on the same page this year, and frankly, this was a disappointing season. So, I'm not coming in here and bashing the Bulldogs. If anything, I thought they had a hell of a season, but just didn't quite able to capitalize. And I'm wondering if they can take that next step. And you're saying that you got no issues. You think that they are a college football playoff team next year?
I think that they will win the East. I know Florida's getting better. I think Coley looked a lot better, if you want to say a coach looked better, against Baylor. That was a very good defense against Baylor that we just seem to have our way with. I think we got a positive note, but it just, in all of this, and they showed the 5 quarterbacks. I understand that we still got to be proven there, but pretty sure Fromm's going to go first round in the NFL, and he took a lot of abuse from the media this year, and a lot of it was not Jake's fault. He can't catch the ball and throw it. But I think we're going to be as good. I think we're going to. We haven't fallen off. We haven't fallen off. That's been what's been said is Georgia's fallen off a little bit. I don't see it.
Derek, they're not. And we got to run. They have not fallen off. In fact, they will be a top 5 preseason team. But this is such a huge season for Kirby Smart coming up, right? Because at this point, you continue to have these recruiting classes. Can you be one of these college football playoff teams, and can you compete for a title? Oh, no, I-Man's on hold. We'll get to him on the other side. Stick around. Who knows what happens here on the Paul Finebaum Show.
We are off and running and glad you are with us the day after the day after. Welcome to the middle of January. We have made it, and plenty to do today, and let us get started right now. Joe Brady's going to the Panthers. That's the big story in the NFL, and what does it mean to Ed Orgeron?
You got Joe Brady, who is one of the more unique, fascinating people I've been around, just in the sense that, he is this quirky, weird, just uber, unbelievably confident, kind of just strange, kind of cult-like legend figure. And I don't think that's exaggerating. He really is just one of those personalities you get, once a generation out of program.
The defensive end that is on your program all the time.
You talking about Marcus?
Yeah. Let me tell you, that was the greatest thing in the world to see. You talk about somebody who was living LSU. I laughed my head off. It's a wonder he didn't wet his pants.
Was it fake money? Was it real? And does it really matter, guys?
Money ain't got no owners, only spenders, right?
Was Odell Beckham handing out $2 bills with Clemson stamps on them?
Where'd you get
Because
that?
these were littered on Bourbon Street.
I woke up about noon yesterday, and I wasn't feeling real well. And then I had to watch the Finebaum show, and then I play in the pool league. I had to go shoot pool last night. And I shot really good considering my condition.
The guys, cheating going on in sports, that's a new one on me.
Especially in Boston.
Yeah, the Red Sox somewhat implicated in this Astros situation as well. So
I'm shocked.
Well,
shocked.
it
The
goes back
Patriots and the Red Sox would cheat.
I think Ed Ogeron is one of the greatest examples that you'll ever find in any area of business, whether it's sports or regular business, of a guy who genuinely self-evaluated and said, what have I done poorly in the past that I need to improve? And he changed himself.
My mother told me that you met your wife jogging around. Is that right?
I think there was a postman had delivered my mail to her mailbox. So I ran into her one day and she said, I've got some mail for you. And when I heard she was a doctor, I was immediately interested.
I'm just barely above average, but that's how my whole life been.
Well, let me say, being above average is better than being below average.
Well, I agree with that.
Surprise! Hi, it is Peter Burns in for the last hour. I don't know why I just did that. I just felt kind of interesting with Mr. Belk over there on that other side of the camera. I'm Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. So much stuff in this last 30-minute sprint. We'll be taking it up to 6:30 Eastern as we had Alabama defeating Auburn, giving the Auburn Tigers their first loss in basketball last night, and it was a whooping 83-64. And then you saw a buzzer beater down in Columbia, South Carolina, with the buzzer beater. Jermaine Couisnard ended up getting that great shot, ended up putting 26 points up for Frank Martin's squad, and they hand the Big Blue Nation, the Kentucky Wildcats, a loss there in Columbia. But big news around the SEC is that it's not just Joe Brady that's leaving the LSU team. It is also Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda, according to Adam Rittenberg and other sources, say that he's going to be the next head coach over at Baylor. So before I get into I-Man and Linda and all these phone calls, I'm going to ask Brams and our boy Kubiak here this question. When your favorite team wins a national title, how long do you just don't care? And what I mean by that is, how long is you're like, all right, we got one, I'm allowed to chill?
5-year grace period.
5? 5 seems a lot. Like I feel 5 is a little bit heavy. Now then again, you're a TCU fan, so you don't win any championships. So yeah, 5 might be the right number.
Whoa.
Shots. No, but look, you got to look at who's won it. I mean, Alabama, LSU, Auburn.
Okay.
I mean, if you asked a Georgia fan how long their grace period would be, it's been 40 years. So 5 would be good for them, probably.
All right, so Kubiak, you're a Notre Dame fan. They've had
I'd be very happy with 5 years of just being like, look, we won one. Okay. Getting there is tough. Winning it,
Agree. And the reason why I bring that is to full circle, because I see people in my Twitter mentions at Peter Burns ESPN, the callers today going like, oh, LSU's going 8-4 and 9-3, and next year is going to be a disaster and stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. At a minimum, I'm at a 2-year I don't care moment now that LSU has won national championship. And the reason why I say that is the fact of, as long as it doesn't turn into a 6-6, 7-5 season, you're going to be losing a lot, but that's a good thing. I would much rather lose all these coordinators and all these players to an early entry to the NFL draft having won a championship than to go 10-2 and people go like, man, I'm just not feeling it here. And that's happened to schools in this program, in this conference. It's happened to Alabama. It's happened to Georgia. And guess what? It wasn't off the heels of national championship games either. So for LSU to do that, I look at this news and I'm like, all right, they're leaving. All right, they're leaving. Well, okay, maybe they'll reload. Maybe they don't. I got a 2-year grace period. That's all I'm saying. What is your grace period? Give us a call. 855-242-PAUL is the number. I-Man, what's up, my brother? How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Peter Burns, Peter Burns, Peter Burns. So nice you got to say it 3 times. That's what Johnny Winter said about New York City. New York sounds so nice you got to say it twice. New York. War damn eagle. People accuse me of not talking about my team. My team happens to be the Auburn Tigers. And you know what? You could not find a Bama basketball fan till today. You couldn't find one till today. And you know what? That ass whooping that Auburn took last night was it's the perfect medicine for the rest of the season. And that's what Clemson didn't understand the other night when they played against LSU. You can't be there if you don't do something. You got to know who you are. The Auburn Tigers now know who they are. They know what they can't do. They know what they should do, and they know to pay attention and follow the coach. And it was a great game. I've watched Auburn play every game this year in basketball, and I will watch the rest of them. And I tip my hat to the Alabama fan that might have been a basketball fan 2 weeks ago, but they're coming out the woodwork today like termites. And like that caller you got coming on here in a little bit, Linda, the worst caller to this program's ever had. Ever is a long damn time. Peter Burns. It's a long time. I call Paul out because he said Nick Saban was the big winner the other night after the LSU-Clemson game. Now, the last time I remember seeing anything, Clemson beat the hell out of Alabama by 24. LSU annihilated them in a half. And, of course, the Bama fan will come on, well, we scored more points on them than anybody. LSU coasted to a victory in that game. That game was over at halftime. Those were by-the-way points. It doesn't matter. You got beat, and you got beat down, and that's all it is to it. And Nick Saban didn't win anything the other night. He had a used jacket on. He stole from some commercial set, the Aflac thing. He's dyeing his damn hair. This is the Orgeron dynasty. I mean, that's what Paul's trying to protect. He didn't want Dabo to have the dynasty. When Goliath got hit by that damn rock David threw, and he chopped his head off, that head was too big for David to pick up, so he had to kneel down like some of these deer hunters do in the pictures. That was it. It was one fight. It was over, and the dynasty done. Goliath was bad news. Alabama's old news. It's the new Orgeron dynasty now. And Bama fans got to get used to it. They are not are they a good team or they're a good program? I don't know if they're a good team or program. I know they're the complete sellout at the crossroads, anything for a win. They hate Auburn, and now they're going to be fashionable because you said something about, oh, look at them, the Alabama fans coming out because they love coach. No, they don't. They're only doing it because you said so. They follow people on TV like the Pied Piper. If they was all rats, you could whistle them into the sea. I mean, every damn one of them, you could whistle them into the sea. You could whistle Yankee Doodle. You could whistle Popeye. You could whistle Inagata DeVita, and they would follow you because you said so, Peter Burns. Now, what do you think about that? War Damn Eagle, we getting faster, Peter Burns. You have a great day and a Happy New Year.
Hi, man.
Hi, my name is Sebastian Maniscalco.
So entertaining, you had to say it 3 times. A lot to unpack there, my man. And, yes, Linda and Argo, you're going to get a chance to respond here momentarily. I do find it interesting that there was a winner in Nick Saban in a certain way because now there's a big bad boogeyman. The difference is Nick Saban always is chasing someone, but it's not LSU. Nick Saban chases perfection. And this is a huge year for Nick Saban coming up in this aspect. It's huge for Nick Saban to show, you know what, this idea of Dabo being this all shucks and them having a whole lot of fun and over there in Clemson and having success, all right, that was one thing. But now if you got Ed Orgeron, if he's able to reload after losing Aranda, after losing Brady, after losing Joe Burrow, and he wins the West once again, and oh, by the way, they're having a whole lot of fun doing it, then you start wondering, all right, is the idea of the grind that that Nick Saban puts these kids through and these coaches through, is that resonating in 2020? I still believe it does. Because when I think of excellence in college football right now, I still think of Nick Saban being the GOAT. And that's as a kid born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, saying that. Linda in Argo. Now, Linda, we had I-Man say that you're the worst caller on this show. That can't be correct, right?
No, that's not correct, because every host that's been on your show has loved my calls, including you.
I'm a fan of them, Linda. That's why I had you on right now. I wanted you to respond to what I-Man had to say about you.
Dumbass. I don't give a sweet rat's ass, excuse my language, about what I-Man thinks of me, I'm still in his head.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot get me out of his head. You know, whatever he says about me, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. And listen, I-Man, I am a Bama fan of every sport. He talking about the Alabama fan coming out all of a sudden they just love basketball. I've always loved Alabama. Football, basketball, softball, baseball, every sport that Alabama plays. I'm an Alabama fan, I-Man. Okay? Now, Happy New Year to you, Peter, and your family.
Thank you, Linda. I don't ever want to get on your bad side. I want to be on your good side of the ledger.
Don't hang up on me because I got a couple other things to say.
The floor is yours. I'm afraid. I don't want to. My hand is nowhere close to the hang up button right now.
Good, but I want to say Happy New Year to you and your family, and I'm sure that little Thomas and Bo, that's your girl's name.
Yes, ma'am.
Your baby. I'm sure they're doing just fine, and your wife, I don't know her name, but Happy New Year to her too. And I am so very happy for you and the LSU fans. I am so glad that LSU won to bring the to bring the title trophy back to the SEC. I did not want Clemson to win. Now, I love Squirrel. Listen, I love Squirrel. He knows that I do. But I thought just the opposite. You know, I sat here and thought, well, would I rather have LSU brag for 9 months or Clemson? Well, LSU, absolutely. I didn't want Dabo Swinney and company to get 3 out of 4. I don't want him to be, even though he'd still be right behind Saban, I didn't even want him close. You know?
Linda, I'm just afraid to respond because I don't want to upset with you. So I don't know when you're going to end the phone call, so I'm afraid to hang up.
You respond any way you want to, baby.
No, I'm okay. No, the last thing for you, because we do have to go for a commercial break. But, Linda, I think you're right. I think it was important for the SEC to win. And here's the bigger picture, Linda. I think it was important for a team other than Alabama to have that success. It seems like for the last decade, all I've heard from people chirping when I talk about how good the SEC is like, oh, yeah, it's Alabama and it's top-heavy everybody else. And I think going into next year, Linda, I think it's as wide open as the SEC has been in a decade. I think Bama's going to be good. I still think LSU is going to be good.
Please let me say one more thing. I'll make it real quick. I'm sorry I missed Jim's call today. Happy New Year, Jim. Listen, all these people are down on Jim from Tuscaloosa. They don't understand him. Not saying that I understand him completely, but more than those jokers do. Happy New Year, Jim. I love your calls.
Linda, I love your call. And I think I love I-Man, but I think he was wrong. You're not the worst caller on this show. I like you. Plus, I'm also kind of afraid of you. All right, real quick commercial break. We'll be back one more segment, your phone calls and your tweets. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. What's up, y'all? Last segment of the show is we're going to have a bunch of hoops coming up on SEC Network, so let's rapid fire through a lot of these calls. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum, and let's go. Out to C-Bus. Columbus, we go. What's happening, Jeff?
What's going on, Peter?
Happy New Year, my man.
Happy New Year to you. Congratulations on your Tigers getting the title.
It's a fine day to be a fan of the purple and gold and a fine season, to say the least, my man.
Yeah. Hey, I like I-Man when he calls in, but he's got to shut down that Auburn Tigers are just getting faster, because when I watched that bowl game, a big old slow Big Ten team from Minnesota made Auburn look slow, don't you think?
I think that arguably might have been the biggest surprise, is that Minnesota, of all people, pushed Auburn around in the trenches, Jeff. I think that when I look at all the surprises, it didn't surprise me that LSU whooped up on Clemson and Oklahoma. It surprised me that Auburn got pushed around there.
They got pushed around, and Minnesota's receivers looked a hell of a lot faster than Auburn's defensive backs to me. You know what I mean? So I-Man needs to just set that down about getting faster. Hey, Peter, I thought I could come in and speak with some relevance about your how long do you get to use this title, and kick back and relax?
Right.
I say when Ohio State won the title, beat Alabama in the semis, I got a good 2 years of run out of that with scoreboard and skin on the wall. And maybe outside you could get 3 years if you're lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was a question I had, that when your favorite team wins a title, how much are you just living and dying by the next year? And I felt like as an LSU fan, I speak personally, and Tiger fans may feel differently. I feel like for 2 years, I'm good. And
you're good.
I'm solid. I think that's fair, Jeff.
I mean, when you can come into the Finebaum show and Paul's got the button on the other side and you get 2 years of run, talking smack as a Buckeye fan, then that's a pretty good gauge, don't you think? I mean,
absolutely.
When you could get Larry from Shelby all stirred up and all the other boys calling scoreboard for 2 years, I think that's a pretty good gauge. Hey, I want to ask you an honest opinion, Peter. What do you think of the SEC refs? And I'm not even talking about the Ohio State Fiesta Bowl game, but I hear a lot of callers into this show during the season. Does the SEC have a problem with their referees in general? What do you think about that?
You know, it's interesting, Jeff. I mean, listen, and thank you for the phone call, my man. We're going to try to rapid fire through a couple of these. I think that if you look at SEC officiating and then you look at Pac-12 officiating and Big Ten officiating all throughout, in the world of social media, all people are going to ever show is how much they hate it. I will tell you this, the SEC does as good of a job in recruiting players and recruiting coaches and facilities and whatnot, that if the SEC wants to have the best officials that they can have, they're going to have the best officials. And the problem is that the fan bases here have an exponential amount of care. The reason why people don't hear about how bad Pac-12 officiating is or Big 12 officiating is or Big 10 officiating is because people don't care about it as much here in this conference. So, no, I'm not a believer in that the SEC officiating is quote-unquote bad. I think that it just truly means more to some people, and that's why you hear a lot more of the noise, especially here on the Paul Finebaum Show. Jimmy in Chicago, talk to me, my man.
Hey, well, in response to what Jeff said, I would normally agree with him. And in your case, considering the season that LSU had and how many coaches and players they're going to be losing, yeah, 2 years is absolutely legitimate. But when Ohio State upset Alabama in the first playoff and won the national championship, they had virtually everybody coming back. And a lot of people were talking about them possibly winning 2 or 3 in a row. And I would say Jeff's euphoria may have lasted less than a season because they were everybody's favorite to come back and win the whole thing. And then they lose to a Michigan State team that rolled into Columbus with their third-string quarterback, gave up 40 points to a horrible Nebraska team 2 weeks earlier, and they come into Columbus. They hold an Ohio State offense with Ezekiel Elliott on it to 5 first downs, 130 total yards, and they knock Ohio State out of the national championship picture. I'm guessing that a lot of Ohio State fans are still feeling the sting of that. I don't think they had a 2-year or 5-year period to kind of rest on their laurels, even though until they play Alabama again, if they play them again, I'm sure they will someday. But they're still going to be. You're always going to hear them over that. But
right.
I'd say that stings pretty good. But what I wanted to ask you real quick, Peter, was they finally, after 50 years, Billy Cannon got his statue outside Tiger Stadium last year.
Yep.
How long is it before Burrow gets his, and then they announce that they're retiring number 9?
It is interesting. Jimmy, thanks for the phone call. And the question is, do you retire the number or does it become one of those numbers that LSU has, right? 18 is always the leader. It's the Jacob Hester. It's the Matt Mauks of the world, Caleb Vaughn, Chase Onworth this year. And 7 has been kind of their playmaker, right? Leonard Fournette, Grant Delpit, Honey Badger. So the question is, do you retire the number 9 or do you say, you know what, you are the leader? I personally, with what happened as an LSU fan, no one should ever wear the number 9 in LSU football history. Ever. Ever again. No one, not one player should ever wear the number 9. And a statue is coming. Here's the deal. I don't want it just to be a statue of Burrow throwing the ball. I don't want it to be a statue of him making the Heisman pose, whatever. I want it to be a statue of him cross-legged, sitting down, smoking the cigar, because that was the victory. It was as sweet as it could be, and that was the moment where you're like, yeah, you know what? Retire his number, build a statue, because he is a college football player we will never see again. One more quick phone call in here. Jordan is in North Carolina. Quickly, man, what do you got?
Yes, sir. I think 3 years plus grace period, and here's why. I think when people talk about the 2019 LSU team, they're going to put them up there with like the 1985 Chicago Bears. Historic, just an absolute historic team. And I think the word that LSU fans better have in the next 2 to 3 years in their mind is perspective and truly understand what just happened. Because if they're thinking that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years again, there's just no way. There's no way. I think it was just a truly historic season. It's better than what Clemson done last year. I can't think of a season in my lifetime that I've ever seen a team just be just truly dominant the way that they were this season.
And Jordan, we got to roll, and you're right, it was. And it's too close to say it wasn't the best team ever and this and that. I can't even say that. I need 1 or 2 years to get that perspective. But tell you what, as an LSU fan, I may not care that LSU won, and okay, who cares that happens next year? I guarantee you Ed Ogeron does right now, and he's recruiting a new offensive coordinator, a new D coordinator. We'll talk about it tomorrow when I return here. When you have a moment like this, everyone shows it on SportsCenter. You get to do all these interviews. What's your phone like? And what's your Twitter account like after something like that?
Man, it just last night I had to turn my phone off for me to go to sleep because it was just ringing too much.
Ringing too much. What do you think? Like 50, 100 text messages or what?
Nah, I think more than that.
More than that. All right. Yeah. So the tweets have been fantastic because he says, you saw athletic director Ray Tanner says you love to see it. And, of course, it ended up being a video of the game winner. And then I love this tweet from Alex English, one of the man, the myth, the legend, says, I ain't scared of you, Bernie Mac voice. And they continue to go forward. And then, of course, my man, Sindarius Thornwell, I told y'all Lil Bro was the killer that didn't get a chance to play last year. Watch what he is going to become. So, with that being said, Frank Martin has called you kind of the heartbeat of this team and wants you to take a leadership role. How do you do that?
Just by staying vocal and just keep on being on my teammates to be great every day. That's all.
Now, this was not, hey, you're not right down the road in Columbia, South Carolina. You're an East Chicago kid. And I know you take a lot of pride in that. It's in your Twitter profile. And so many people have discussed, hey, showing East Chicago representing down there in Columbia. How do you make that jaunt from East Chicago to go play for Frank Martin?
I come from a rough place. So it's like just my mentality. I just fed on with his energy.
What is the energy around this program right now with a big win against Kentucky, which, again, everybody wanted to be packed into Columbia to see that game last night?
It was a big win for us, so we got to get back to work and get ready for Saturday.
All right, so with that being said, what's the one thing you want to keep working on in your game to get a little bit better going forward?
Just keep leading our team and just getting our teammates involved, get my teammates involved.
My man, it was an unbelievable shot, an unbelievable win, and maybe something as a catalyst not only for South Carolina basketball, but especially for your future. And you can follow him on Twitter, TheFuture11, a couple underscores in there as well. Jermaine, great stuff, man. We appreciate the time.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back, Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns sitting in for Mr. Finebaum, who gets a couple of well-deserved days off, the hardest-working man in show business. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. We get to more of your phone calls, and let's head down, I should say, to Alabama. Melvin, what's up, my man? Happy New Year.
Hi, Peter. How you doing?
Oh, man, living a blessed life, sir. I hope you are as well.
All right, this is the first time calling for me. But I got something for you, though. I just want to, all the Alabama fans, all they pulling for LSU because what they did, they kept the national championship in the SEC. They kept Alabama dynasty intact. And we didn't want Clemson winning another national championship. They didn't holler that the dynasty for them. So that's what I was saying, like, why wouldn't you pull for LSU to keep the national championship in the SEC and keep the SEC the best conference it is?
Melvin, that's interesting that you say that because I do feel that LSU needs Alabama and Alabama needs LSU. And the reason why I say that is that you need a pace car, right? Somebody to always, whether it's NASCAR or whatever, like a lead runner to basically, hey, you need to keep up with us. And for the longest time, LSU knew that they were pretty good compared to everybody else, but they weren't Bama. And so when Ed Ogeron said we coming, and he knew how important that Alabama game was this year, I still think that that's where LSU won the national championship game. Not against Clemson, but they won the national championship game in Tuscaloosa when they went out there and they slayed and they exercised that demon that was beating Alabama. And so for the other side of it as well, too, I did not want to see Clemson win that title. I did not want to see and have to listen to, oh, shucks, Dabo, we've won 3 out of 4, and little old Clemson got it done again. No, that needed to be shut down, and LSU did it. And now for Alabama, guess what? All they're going to do is say, great, we're coming after you, right? And that was huge.
Right. You're right.
Melvin, thanks for the phone call, my man. I appreciate that. Let's head to Indiana. Lee, thanks for joining Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. What's up, Lee?
Not much, Peter. Glad to talk to you, man. I just got one question for you. It's kind of, and I have to agree with Melvin, first of all. The SEC stands for Superior Elite Conference, in my opinion. You're the best in the SEC. You're going to be the best in the nation. That's all there is to it. My question for you is this. What do you think Florida's chances are of winning the SEC? They've got the only returning quarterback out of Florida and Georgia and Alabama and LSU. But how good is Travis? Is he good enough to take them to the next level or not?
Well,
I'll go ahead and hang up and listen to your call off the air.
Lee, thank you so much for the phone call. I am so excited about next year, Lee, and because I do firmly believe that the SEC is as wide open. It's going to be a great matchup between A&M and the Kentucky Wildcats. That game in Memorial Coliseum in Lexington. Kennedy Carter might not play in that game, but A&M has won 9 out of the last 10. Enjoy. Courtney Lyle and Carolyn Peck on the call.
To SEC Network Women's Basketball presents